report to be fed in the. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. To feed in the proposals the Commission is highly likely to present in January on how to deal with energy and climate policies and whether or not we should have targets, binding targets, and how many targets for 2030. There's a lively discussion going on in the Parliament as well as in our group to be well prepared for this report. At the same time, we face the ETS, the revision of the ETS and proposals upcoming in that field. And when you carefully look to the item this morning, it's not energy and sustainability in general, but especially focused on cities and regions, because there, especially in dense populated areas, there are even more challenges to meet these targets and obligations. So I'm very happy that I can introduce an excellent panel to you. Unfortunately, Commissioner Oettinger couldn't make it, but I think with all the knowledge here behind the table and with you present here, members, to participate in the discussion, I think we can have an interesting debate, and we certainly will. For the opening remarks, I would like to pass the floor to my colleague Lambert van Nistelrooy, who is not only a deputy member of the Industry Committee, but he is also, and that's his main task, EPP Group coordinator in the Regional Development Committee. Lambert, please could you make some opening remarks and then we can ask the speakers to give their contributions. Please, the floor is yours.
Dankjewel, Corien, heel graag. Goedemorgen allemaal. We worden gewebstreamd, dus de halve wereld kijkt mee, ga ik vanuit. De tweede dag, gisteren ook over de koers gesproken van de EVP, van onze groep. En dan praten we hier met energie en duurzaamheid over een heel duidelijk EVP-thema. Het gaat over de kwaliteit van leven, leefomgeving op dit moment en voor de nieuwe generaties. En laat me heel duidelijk zeggen, dat is dus niet iets van de groenen in het parlement. Het is de EVP en je noemde net al de commissaris Oettinger, Hedegaard en anderen die daar de kar trekken. En wij zijn de mensen van de praktijk en de mensen van de uitvoerbaarheid, niet van allerlei opgeschroefde targets en centrale systemen. Het gaat hier maar voor een heel klein stukje over ideologie. Het gaat hier veel meer over hoe je inderdaad dit in de praktijk uitvoert en hoe je de economie daarmee versterkt. En laat me nog een voorbeeldje geven. Ik herinner me zeer wel toen de gaskraan werd dichtgedraaid 2 malen op een rij vanuit Rusland in de Oekraïne. Wat er dan gebeurt in één keer in Midden-Europa. En het was toen inderdaad die EVP-fractie die met het rapport van Fidel Castro erin springt. En dan komt het op solidariteit aan. En weer op praktische invulling weet u dat nu die gaspompstations naar 2 kanten pompen. En dat er een systeem met afspraken is dat als er zo'n calamiteit is, dat we elkaar bijspringen. Dat zijn hele simpele dingen die inspringen op nood en noodzaak bij burgers en iedereen die naar ons kijkt. Leveringszekerheid, ook op momenten dat er rare dingen gebeuren. En nogmaals, die agenda die gedragen wordt door de EVP van energie en ecologie, die zijn goed te verbinden. We sturen daarbij op Europees niveau met name op doelen. Wat wil je bereiken? Hoe wil je er over een aantal jaren voor staan? De 2020 afspraken die ook in de lidstaten en vandaag in dit debat steden en regio's worden ingevuld. En nogmaals gezegd, Niet te veel centralisme. Wij handhaven nadrukkelijk de energiemix. Het zijn de lidstaten die beslissen of ze met schaliegas wat doen, of ze veel met energie of met zonne-energie doen. Het is inderdaad die keuze die we decentraal willen houden. We sluiten daarin niets uit. En initiatieven voor waterstof, juist die hele technologische ontwikkeling voor kernfusie die we ook samen trekken in Europa, waar we veel op investeren, houden we onverminderd, los van kritiek van wie dan ook, houden we die in de benen. Het is deze aanpak die burgers, bedrijven en ook de overheden aan zet brengt. En ik ben blij met die EU-doelstellingen. Zonder die doelstellingen van energiebesparing, duurzame energieopwekking en energie-efficiëntie zou er in Nederland, in dit land, geen energieakkoord gekomen zijn. In Nederland wordt zo'n akkoord, wat met alle partners nu het afgelopen jaar is ontwikkeld, wordt door de overheid vaak met tandenknarsend aanvaard, omdat men aan Europese doelstellingen vastzit. Dus zo slecht is dat nog niet, dat sturen op doelen en met partners invullen. En dan zie ik ook terug die EVP-hand in dat hele programma wat Barroso heeft geformuleerd. Slimmer, groener, duurzamer en mensen aan het werk, EU 2020. En die agenda levert banen op en het wordt met name decentraal in regio's en steden opgepakt. En ik herinner me zeer wel dat we nog onder mevrouw Hübner als commissaris de eerste keer de burgemeesters bij elkaar hadden. Toen nog van 150 steden en nu inmiddels 600 die zich allemaal hebben verbonden via hun publieke besluitvorming aan die CO2-doelstelling en ook die uitvoering ter hand nemen. Nu zijn het 1500 gemeenten die dat doen. Ik vind dat de goede aanpak. So far, so good. Maar toch heb ik kritiek op een aantal punten. Europa lijkt echt, voor wat dit onderdeel betreft, op een grote puzzel met 28 losse stukjes. En die mag je dan bij elkaar leggen. U weet hoe de grenzen lopen. En daar zit hem tegelijkertijd ook het probleem. Europa maakt onvoldoende gebruik van zijn schaalvoordelen. Van het feit dat je zaken juist tot een groot voordeel kunt neerbrengen. Bijvoorbeeld door toch groot regionaal, Noord-West-Europa, bijvoorbeeld Zuid-Europa, echt als een energie-eenheid te benaderen. En wat is het gevolg daarvan? Het gevolg is dat we in het ene land een overcapaciteit hebben in de energiecentrales en aan de andere kant van de grens nieuwe centrales worden gebouwd. En dat geldt ook in dit land, in Nederland, waar we nu gloednieuwe kolencentrales, ik moet u zeggen, energie-CO2-vriendelijke centrales, kolencentrales klaar hebben, die waarschijnlijk niet eens worden opgestart. En tegelijkertijd staan ook gascentrales die qua uitstoot veel beter zijn, staan stil. En in plaats van goede afspraken over grenzen te maken, hebben we nu, Marianne Thijssen, nog voornemens in België om in België ook nieuwe centrales te bouwen. Nou, het is een beetje kolder wat we aan het doen zijn, maar dan moeten we wel zorgen voor een optimale interconnectie over grenzen op die netten. En daar is juist ook, kijk, tussen Spanje en tussen Frankrijk eigenlijk vrijwel niets van terechtgekomen. Dat is toch een belangrijk kritiekpunt. Dus het tweede punt wat ik wil noemen is, wij zijn afgestapt van het gegeven dat we die groene energiecertificaten eigenlijk in het andere land opgewekt konden meetellen in onze eigen systemen. Nogmaals gezegd, elk land moet aan die doelstellingen voldoen, terwijl het rapport van Royal onlangs ook in het parlement vastgesteld heeft gezegd, je moet opwekken waar het het beste kan. En je moet vervolgens verbinden. Dat is wat anders dan de landsgrenzen toch als uitgangspunt te nemen. Daarin heeft Royal een trend gezet. En dit voorjaar, u noemde het al, komt Oettinger met een nieuwe opvatting over hoe we naar 2030 gaan en daaroverheen. Ik hoop dat we eindelijk afraken van die zelfbinding per lidstaat en dat we creatiever met elkaar zijn. Dan nog een paar opmerkingen ter afsluiting van deze voorzet, zoals gezegd. Kijk, ik ben er blij mee dat door onze decentrale aanpak, subsidiariteit, lokaal en regionaal energie en duurzaamheid op die agenda zijn gekomen. En dat hebben we nu ook gevolgd. We hebben in de besluiten die wij met het MFF gaan nemen volgende week, hebben we niet besloten tot een apart zonnefonds, een apart waterfonds, een apart windfonds, noem maar op. Nee, we hebben gekozen om de belangrijkste middelen van de Unie, ongeveer zo'n 40%, om die in te zetten in regionale fondsen, regionaal en lokaal met de steden. En dan gaat het over 5 fondsen, niet alleen cohesie, maar juist platteland, ontwikkelingsfonds. We praten over zaken als regionaal ontwikkelingsfonds. En dan is het zo dat het niet meer zo is dat je voor één project van biomassa of voor andere dingen, dat je dan uit één fonds mag trekken, maar we gaan naar multifund, waardoor platteland en regionale ontwikkeling en onderzoek bij elkaar komen. En dat is denk ik heel erg goed. Dan iets over de standaardisatie. Het is toch te gek dat wij nu met onze elektrische auto over een paar grenzen gaan en vervolgens die auto niet meer kunnen opladen. Dat Europa met elkaar niet in staat is om één afspraak te maken over die stekker, die oplaadstekker. Dat is maar een voorbeeld. Weet u nog de periode dat wij met de GSM trendzettend waren? Nu hebben we hier een nieuwe kans en we verknippen, we kneuteren onze mogelijkheden. We gaan straks spreken vanuit Philips, de bedrijven. Ik hoor heel graag wat zij ervan vinden. Ten slotte. Kijk, gisteren hebben we met elkaar gediscussieerd en zat op deze stoel zat de vertegenwoordiger van Portugal. En die zei van, inderdaad, we stoppen af van beton en asfalt. Portugal heeft op dit moment 60% meer snelwegen per hoofd dan Duitsland. Alsjeblieft. Dank u wel. Hij zei, we stoppen daarmee en we gaan naar de andere kant. En daar ligt nou in zo'n land, maar ook in Griekenland, een immense kans om in één keer door te starten in de richting van die duurzame productie, hoogwaardige duurzame productie, door de kennis die zit, fantastische kennis in Europa, de kennis ook daar met Europese middelen om te zetten in goede koolstofarme productie. Dat is nou een slim Europa waarvan we zouden moeten kunnen houden. En het kan. Je kunt die doelstellingen halen. Kijk maar naar Scandinavië, kijk maar naar Oostenrijk. En let dan toch ook op het voordeel wat we hebben in export. Kortom, een ideaal EVP-thema. Wat burgers en bedrijven direct raakt, waar we ook visie op hebben, waar we uitvoering aan geven. Een thema waarmee Europa een voorsprong heeft opgebouwd, maar goed opletten dat we het niet aan Azië of aan de Verenigde Staten weg laten lekken. Een thema wat ook door de industrie wordt omarmd en waarin we inderdaad via onze fondsen veel kunnen doen. En laten we dat dan met name doen met bijzondere aandacht voor de betaalbaarheid voor die burger. Want we kunnen soms hele mooie kunstjes, maar als die kunstjes straks rechtstreeks op de gezinnen en hun budgetten drukken en op die van de bedrijven hebben we het niet goed gedaan. Dus we moeten die schaalvoordelen pakken om van daaruit ook een echte stimulans te geven aan de Europese economie. Dank u wel.
Thank you very much. Our first speaker is Mr. Walter van Kuijen, who is the Senior Vice President and the Head of the European Affairs Office of Royal Philips. And Royal Philips is one of these Dutch-based multinationals active all over the world, where our former Prime Minister Balkenende spoke about yesterday. Companies who need who have a long-term focus, for whom sustainability is in the heart of the business and who are very innovative. So we are really great to have you here today to learn from your experience and your strategy and how we can link this also to our European agenda. Please, Walter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mrs. Wortmann. This is an honor for me, honorable members of the European Parliament, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity, and apparently the company's been introduced, but as you know, we've been a world leader for 122 years in the space of healthcare, lifestyle and lighting. And maybe we can put our slides up, because I have a few slides to underline what I'm going to say. Well, we'll wait for that. Yep, thank you very much. So I've been asked today, and Lambert, thank you for the introduction, to speak about sustainability and energy challenges for cities. I believe themes that perfectly match the expertise and the experience that we've built up in the company. Why? Because we believe that cities and regions around the globe are impacted by several trends that will become more important over time. Urbanization, aging and climate change. And we already provide today, and I'll speak about some of them, innovative solutions that make cities smarter and well equipped to face these global challenges. Moreover, we'd like to continue to work and partner with all relevant people and parties and groups around the world to continue to deliver better and more affordable solutions. However, there are certain barriers, and some of them were just addressed in the introduction, that slow down the pace of change that we would like to see, and this is precisely why we would like to continue to seek cooperation with the EU institutions and the public sector in general. So let me paint a picture of the world as it will look like in the future. The numbers are known, but I would like to repeat them because it just paints that impactful idea. By 2050, it is predicted that 70% of the world's population will be living in cities, compared to 50% today. That 50% today already generates 80% of our global economic power, the GDP. We expect that, that spending power, the wealth that sits around cities, combined with the decentralization that we also see occurring in cities around the world, and I'll give the example of New York and the announcement that came in 2 days ago, will empower cities to make decisions to address their growth challenges, which is an interesting piece of good news. Aging. By 2050, 1.5 billion people will be over 65. That creates pressure on our environment, the environments that we create to support the changing demographics. And for example, we are very concerned and interested in changing our healthcare systems to cope with these challenges. And then, last but not least, already mentioned, climate change. It is continuing to be a pressure. It's a debate around energy supply and the security of our energy, as well as how we consume the energy going forward. Obviously, major challenges. However, and this is what we would like to do at Philips, and that's what we've done for the last 122 years, we like to look at these as opportunities. Opportunities to find new solutions and to innovate. Behind all these frightening numbers, we believe are people, communities, and ways that people live, that we believe we can collectively empower. As we team up, we can empower them and support to build stronger solutions, to innovate together, and as a result, and thank you for saying that, Lambert, create innovative industry that uses the internal market of Europe to compete globally. And as a starting point, and I'll build on that, we believe that livable cities need integrated solutions to be resilient or environmentally sustainable, inclusive, creating equal opportunities to participate for all citizens, and authentic, reflecting, for example, the local identity. So let me go to the first major impact. Energy efficiency is a key element to make a city resilient or sustainable, because it basically frees up resources. Public and commercial buildings around the globe account for 40% of global energy use today. Investment in energy efficiency in buildings, which we promote, always provides a good return. There's no debate about that. In Germany, very reliable, the federal budget has calculated that every euro invested in energy efficiency in buildings brings a return of 4 to 5 euros in the first year. Moreover, investing in such projects in renovation brings benefits to society, for example, reducing energy poverty, improving the indoor climate, and the attractiveness of the environment in which we live. Now let me go specifically to lighting. Lighting alone accounts for 19% of global energy consumption. And we believe lighting therefore should play an important role in creating smarter and more sustainable cities. Inclusion of infrastructure, smart infrastructure and energy efficient lighting will change the ecosystems of our cities. It's a great way not only to reduce consumption, but for example, and this is a major challenge as we have done our research in Eastern Europe, citizens feel insecure, not safe in larger cities that are emerging. So by implementing smarter, efficient solutions, we can also create that feeling of security, accessibility of city centers, and for example, highlighting public authentic structures like the bridge you see here, which was just leadified, the Poniatowski Bridge in Warsaw. However, as I've said before, despite our 2020 ambitions, we are slow in Europe. As an example, current market renovation rates are really below par. And the implementation of existing directives is slow. Just a few member states, for example, have implemented the Energy Efficiency Directive. And we are not alone in this world, and that is really my fear. We've just announced that we are going to renew all the buildings in Dubai. We just announced that we're going to do all of the city of Buenos Aires. And this week, New York City announced that they will replace all 250,000 city light bulbs, city light points, with energy efficient and smart solutions. So concretely, the challenge is out there. What can we do together as partners in Europe? Despite the fact that I also agree that we made progress in transformation of our cities, I also believe that the connection that Lambert already talked about of the structural funds, the cohesion funds, with, for example, the programming of Horizon 2020, will make a very positive contribution to our ability to innovate and connect innovation to regional and city infrastructure projects. The challenge is, again, that we need more speed. We need to accelerate, particularly with the aim of creating that innovative European industry that can compete globally and export. To make this happen, we recommend the following key steps. Speed up infrastructure renovation through public procurement. Basically, government should become our launching customers by not looking at the lowest cost of purchase, but at total cost of ownership. Reinforce compliance to the directives, and I mentioned the EED, but I would also like to mention the Energy Performance Directive of buildings. Secondly, support innovative financial instruments that will allow cities, for example, to enter into energy performance contracting or public-private partnerships. It will make them more economically sustainable. And then lastly, that's where we need to team up. We need to communicate and raise public awareness of what can be done and what can be achieved. This is an aspirational story, a positive story, one that can focus on the benefits of green cities and green schools, for example. And governments and you can support this too, showing results and talking about positive outcomes. While we discuss our way forward in Europe and discuss, for example, what we want to be ambitious about in 2030, the world is moving on. And I showed a couple of examples. The world is rapidly investing in innovation in this space, and we can learn from their determination to succeed, which is all about speed and acceleration. So in summary, I would like to call for European governments and the EU to support that innovative industry in Europe, to compete globally by strengthening the internal market, providing those enabling policy conditions, and being a customer, a launching customer of innovative, sustainable solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Walter. This will certainly give fruit for further discussions, and I already look forward to that. But before we enter into the discussion, I'm honored to give the floor to René van der Linden, member of the Dutch Senate, former Dutch Secretary of State for European Affairs, and over the years always very active in our party to make clear that our European agenda is set in an ambitious way, and we are very grateful for that, René, that work you've done there. But you're here in your capacity as a special envoy for energy for the Caucasus. Our Dutch government appointed you in this role. So we look forward to your contribution, which will be a more European or worldwide perspective on this topic. Please, René, the floor is yours.
Dank u wel, mevrouw de voorzitter. Laat ik beginnen met te stellen dat het grondstoffenvraagstuk als een veiligheidsaspect en als een concurrentieaspect te weinig aandacht krijgt. En dat wij in Europa, maar ook in de lidstaten, veel meer aandacht moeten besteden aan de geopolitieke verschuivingen die plaatsvinden op het punt van de verwerving en de zekerstelling van grondstoffen. En dan heb ik niet alleen over energie, maar dan hebben we ook over de schaarse grondstoffen die voor de ICT-energie van eminent belang zijn. En we zien dat landen als China buitengewoon actief zijn op het continent als Afrika om zich zeker te stellen van grondstoffen in het algemeen, maar ook deze grondstoffen. De geopolitieke betekenis van grondstoffen en ook energie zou het uitgangspunt moeten zijn van discussie. En een van de voorbeelden is het schaliegas. Wij hebben te weinig op dit ogenblik in het algemeen in kaart gebracht wat de consequenties van de hele schaliegasrevolutie in Amerika heeft voor de energievoorziening, voor de industriepolitiek en voor de prijzen in Europa. We hebben net een voorbeeld gekregen. We hebben gascentrales gebouwd in Nederland en door de schaliegasrevolutie en de prijsdaling in Amerika hebben wij te maken met zeer lage prijzen voor kolen. Die op de Europese markt ook in Nederland hier geleverd worden, waardoor kolencentrales veel aantrekkelijker zijn dan de gascentrales. Dus splinternieuwe gascentrales gewoon leeg liggen. Het betekent ook dat het belang van Amerika voor Europa, en met name voor het Midden-Oosten, zal verschuiven. Want Amerika wordt stilaan energie onafhankelijk. Zelfs een van de grootste voorspellingen zijn een van de grootste energieproducenten ter wereld in de jaren 20, na 2020. En dat heeft natuurlijk ook de consequenties voor de aandacht die Amerika op het veiligheidsterrein geeft voor regio's die voor Europa eminent belang zijn. En daar zal Europa dus zelf ook een grotere verantwoordelijkheid moeten nemen. En verbindt dus ook de energiepolitiek met de veiligheidspolitiek. En ik hoop dat Europa ook in staat is op het punt van de Europese defensiegemeenschap echte stappen vooruit te maken. Omdat wij op dit ogenblik nog steeds een versnipperd beeld hebben op het punt van gemeenschappelijke defensie. Het heeft ook grote consequenties. Laat ik u één voorbeeld geven. Ik was namens de Nederlandse regering 2 maanden geleden vertegenwoordigd namens de regering op een gasexportconferentie in Rusland, georganiseerd door Poetin. Waar alle gasexportlanden aanwezig waren en waar Nederland aanwezig was als observer. Dus zeg maar Iran, Irak, Bolivia, Venezuela, allemaal prachtige regimes zoals u begrijpt. Maar daar waren toch een paar concerns. En de eerste concern was dat als gevolg van de schaliegasontwikkeling er een prijsdrukkend effect zal optreden ook voor de komende periode op het punt van de gasprijzen.
In the gas sector,
een grote zorg.
The coming period.
Dat wordt versterkt door de ontdekking van zeer grote gasvoorkomens in Afrika, landen als Tanzanië. Waar ik was met een handelsmissie naar Nederland, energietoeleveringsbedrijven. Die hebben de derde grote gasbel ter wereld ontdekt. En dus ook de LNG, de liquid gas, zal in de komende jaren, vanaf nu 5 jaar gerekend, het begint nu al. In Rotterdam hebben we de eerste LNG-terminal, we krijgen ook de tweede LNG-terminal. Die zal ook de LNG in grote impact hebben op de energievoorziening. Vandaag de dag is in de Europese industrie grote zorg over het concurrentienadeel voor de energieprijzen voor de energie-intensieve industrieën. En de IEA in Parijs heeft daar nog eens een keer de vinger op de zere wonden gelegd. En natuurlijk, en ik schrijf dat wij nog een enorm besparingspotentieel hebben. Ik vind het besparing, als we praten over duurzaamheid, dan zou ik beginnen met energiebesparing. Besparingspotentieel is aanzienlijk aantrekkelijker in mijn ogen dan ook bijvoorbeeld windenergie. We moeten nog zien of windenergie in de toekomst ook een belangrijke bijdrage kan leveren. Nederland heeft in het energieakkoord grote windcentrales ingecalculeerd op de Noordzee. Ik weet ook niet wat de consequenties zijn van de energiepolitiek in Duitsland. Daar zijn ook verschillende geluiden over. En als je kijkt, Lambert zei, ja, we moeten ook kijken naar de betaalbaarheid. Waar wordt de rekening neergelegd, vraag ik dan maar. Waar wordt de rekening neergelegd van de energiekeuzes, de energiepolitiek die wij maken? Wordt die neergelegd bij de consument? Krijgen we grote weerstand, omdat de koopkracht van de beurs aantast. Wordt die neergelegd bij de industrie? Dan krijgen we een probleem met de werkgelegenheid. Dus met andere woorden, het zou een goed ding zijn als wij de consequenties van de meer recentelijke ontwikkeling op het punt van de energievoorziening, als we die zouden doorrekenen ook naar de consumenten. Europa heeft geen energiepolitiek. Dat is al gezegd. Iedere lidstaat, we kunnen zeggen, ja, iedere lidstaat wil hetzelfde, maar het kan grote tegenstrijdigheden met zich meebrengen. En dat betekent dus dat wij zien dat in Engeland er een programma komt van extra kerncentrales, en in Duitsland een versneld programma is om de kerncentrales te sluiten. En beide zitten in de Europese Unie. Finland en een aantal andere landen, die bouwen kerncentrales. En ik vind persoonlijk, en ik ben vele jaren energiewoordvoerder geweest voor het CDA in de Tweede Kamer, ik vind persoonlijk dat wij te snel zijn om de kernenergieoptie af te schrijven. En dat we de consequenties daarvan ook moeten doorleven. En dat we ook de burgers moeten vertellen wat de consequenties zijn. Wat ik positief vind in de Europese Unie, dat er nu meer aandacht komt voor de energieinfrastructuur. Lambert heeft gezegd Spanje en Portugal, maar dat gaat ook naar de andere, met name ook Oost-Europese landen. Want als er sprake is van solidariteit, moet dat met name zijn als er problemen zijn met de energievoorziening. En dat betekent dus dat wij op dit ogenblik nog steeds een te gebrekkige infrastructuur hebben om zorg te dragen voor vrij verkeer, als ik het zo mag noemen, vrij verkeer van energie over de netten en door de gaspijpleidingen en olievoorzieningen binnen Europa. Een positief effect, dat zou ik niet willen achterwege laten, is dat een enorme impuls gegeven wordt aan de research en de innovatie. Dus ik denk dat wij nog heel moeilijk kunnen voorspellen wat dat betekent bijvoorbeeld voor de energievoorziening op het punt van de zonne-energie. Daar zijn ontwikkelingen in een beginstadium die zeer hoopvol zijn. En ik denk dat zonne-energie een grotere bijdrage kan leveren dan windenergie. Wij zijn het allemaal erover eens dat de hernieuwbare energie, het aandeel daarvan in de totale energievoorziening moet stijgen. Maar dat hoort bij een prijskaartje. En als het alleen maar mogelijk is op grond van blijvende subsidie, dan vind ik dat verkeerde keuzes. Als het is op basis van een tijdelijke subsidie om ontwikkelingen mogelijk te maken, dan is er een uitstekende keuze. Ik vind wel dat ook de horizon van de subsidie die daaraan verbonden is, moet in horizon nemen. Ik zei al, en de vertegenwoordiger van Philips heeft dat duidelijk gemaakt, er is een geweldig potentieel aan energiebesparing mogelijk. Bij de decentrale energievoorziening, die ook in Nederland toeneemt, krijgen we natuurlijk ook later weer het probleem van de overcapaciteit. Naarmate regio's en steden hun eigen energievoorziening gaan voorzien, kan dat betekenen dat de grote energieproducenten met meer overcapaciteit geconfronteerd worden. En wat ik vaststel vandaag in de industrie, dat die bedrijven die in het verleden in warmtekrachtkoppeling geïnvesteerd hebben, een uitstekende wijze van energiebesparing, althans van energie-efficiëntie moet ik zeggen, dat die vandaag geconfronteerd worden met een financieel model wat niet meer haalbaar is, omdat de terugleveringprijs Because op het net voor die bedrijven zo laag is dat het financiële plaatje niet meer uit kan. En dus ook daar zien wij dat er door de decentrale opwekking er ook bepaalde problemen ontstaan.
Decentralization of
tot slot
generation can actually
wil ik graag een pleidooi houden. Ik weet dat dat niet bij alle
I would like to make the following case. I know not everyone
ik
will
wil
want
een
to hear this,
pleidooi
but
voor een strategisch partnerschap met Rusland.
speak out in favor of a strategic
De
partnership
Europese
with
Unie
Russia.
heeft een
The
non-Rusland
European
politiek.
Union has
Die bestaat niet.
a non-Russia policy. We don't actually have a
delen.
proper Russian policy.
En laat zeggen, met name met haren in de boter.
Now,
Voor de lange termijn,
some people will nitpick, but if
voor
you
de
look to
lange
the
termijn
longer term,
en de stabiliteit op het
if you
continent
want stability on
en
our
ook voor de
continent,
energievoorziening, is
and
het
you
van
want stable
eminent
energy
belang
supplies,
dat de
it's
Europese
extremely
Unie en
important indeed for
Rusland
the European Union
komen tot een
and
strategisch
Russia
partnership.
to reach
Ik ben
a strategic
jarenlang
partnership.
actief geweest in de Raad van Europa, ook
I was
voorzitter van de
active in the
Assemblee.
Council of
En ik kan u
Europe.
zeggen,
I
voor mij
actually chaired
staat
its
vast,
assembly at one point.
op basis van al die jaren
I can
ervaring,
tell you on
dat
the
er
basis of
twee landen
my many
zijn
years of
die voor
experience
de
there,
Europese
there
Unie
are two
op
countries
het
which are
Europese continent, en
crucial
naarmate Amerika meer
for
aandacht krijgt voor Azië in
Europe.
plaats van het Midden-Oosten,
The US is
neemt dat
looking
toe.
increasingly towards
Twee landen van
Asia and
eminent belang zijn
There are two
om
extremely
geopolitieke overwegingen
important
en om
countries
volstrekt onderscheiden
on geopolitical grounds,
argumenten. Dat is Turkije en dat
namely
is Rusland.
Turkey and
En als we
Russia.
praten over energievoorziening,
If we're talking about energy
dan durf ik de
supplies,
stelling aan
then
dat
I will be bold enough to
als wij een strategisch
express the
bondgenootschap
position
hebben
that if we have a
met
strategic
beide landen,
alliance,
dat in het belang is
with
ook van de
both countries,
energievoorziening van Europa.
then that
Turkije,
will serve the interests
Azerbeidzjan,
of
Kazachstan.
European energy.
Turkije gaat nu de TAP en de TANAP-leiding
Turkey
aanleggen.
is going to be able to
Nabucco
turn
is
on
begraven.
the top of energy supplies from Azerbaijan
Naarmate
and
er meer
neighboring countries.
pijpleidingen komen tussen de gasproducerende landen.
Nabucco is
en
one thing, but the
de
more
Europese
pipelines you
Unie
have
is dat in
between
het voordeel
gas-producing
van de
countries in the
Europese
European Union, the better it
Dus
will
ik
be
heb
for
mij
the
nooit
European
verzet
Union.
tussen Nord Stream. Ik vind dat een hele goede zaak.
We don't want to
Maar
spend just
onder
on
voorwaarde
Nord Stream.
dat de landen
It's very
die
useful in
niet
itself.
behoren tot het
But
Europese gasnetwerk,
countries
dat
who are
die
not
ook aansluiting
hooked
krijgen
up
op
to
het
the
Europese
European gas
gasnetwerk,
network
dat we de zekerheid van
must
voorziening
be linked up so
ook
that we can
in
have secure energy
noodsituaties
supplies
gewaarborgd
in
krijgen.
emergency situations
En tot slot,
too. And
ieder land
one
heeft
very
zo
last
zijn
point,
eigen
every
energiepolitiek.
country has
En
its
we
own
pleiten
energy
allemaal voor een
policy.
gemeenschappelijk
We're all
energiebeleid.
calling
En
out
vervolgens gaan we
for
onze eigen
a common
nationale
energy
belangen
policy, but
los van
we
elkaar.
pursue our national
En ik geef het mooiste
energy
voorbeeld
agendas
van
in
Nederland.
isolation one from another. The clearest example of that is in
In
the
de
Netherlands.
energiecrisis in 1973,
In the 1973
lang
energy
geleden,
crisis, many years
daarna in
ago,
1978,
and then
overigens voor degenen die tegen de
again in
euro zijn, zeg ik
1978,
nogmaals,
I make this point to
toen
the
betaalden we 12%
anti-euro camp.
hypotheekrente,
We had
we hadden een
12%
werkloosheid van 15%.
mortgage
En toen was
rates,
er
dus 15%
concurrentie
unemployment.
op de valutamarkten die veel
And,
groter was. Dus het valutarisico tussen de landen.
There were
De
much
sterke
greater
en de zwakke landen was
exchange
veel groter dan het ondernemersrisico.
risks amongst the
Met
various
andere woorden, dat was
currencies.
Maar toen heeft Nederland
stronger in
als
the
gasexporterend
weak ones,
land,
but the Netherlands
en
as a
Joop
gas
was,
exporting country,
premier hier, die hebben de gaskraan een beetje dichtgedraaid naar Duitsland. Want we hadden het gas zelf nodig.
they supplied slightly less to the German market because we needed more
Dat wil ik
gas
toch meegeven,
domestically.
dat we, laat zeggen, ook soms wel eens een keer naar onszelf moeten kijken. En het tweede
So
wat
the
gebeurd
point
is,
is, you do need to
en dat
look to
gebeurt vandaag
yourselves
de dag nog te
every
vaak,
now and then.
dat wij zeiden, wij hebben geen probleem, want we hebben gas.
The other thing is, we said, well, we've got no
En
problem,
dat
we've
hebben we
got
een dag
gas.
of 14 volgehouden.
And
Want toen
the
bleek
last
dat
couple of weeks,
de
and then
economie
it
in
dawned on
Europa in
them
elkaar stortte.
that the
En ook wij
economy
uiteraard
in Europe
met
as
de
a
open economie
whole was
getroffen werden
collapsing.
door de
The whole of the European
energiecrisis.
economy was affected by the
En de
energy
les moet
crisis.
zijn, en dat is mijn
So the
sterk
lesson we need to
pleidooi
draw
over
from
Lambert.
that,
Wij
and this is a
hebben
point I
in
want
Europa
to drive home very
een
forcefully,
veel
Lambert.
sterkere
In Europe,
gemeenschappelijke
we
energiepolitieke
have
benadering nodig.
we need
En
a
dat
strong
landen die,
community energy policy.
die
Those countries
zwaarwegende, diep ingrijpende energiebesluiten nemen,
who take
dat die eigenlijk verplicht zijn
deep
om dat meer in Europees verband
energy
aan de orde te stellen en te bespreken, om ook de Europese
winding
context
circumstances
in die
have
discussie mee te
to
nemen.
take decisive action to
Ik denk, en dat is mijn laatste
lead us
opmerking,
into the European
dat
debate.
wij
My last comment will
als
be to say
Europa
that, in my
voor
view,
een enorme
we as
opgave
Europe
staan om de energie- en grondstoffenzekerheid, om geopolitieke
have to make
overwegingen
a
hoog
big
op de politieke agenda
effort
te
to
plaatsen. Dank u
place
wel.
secure energy supplies at the top of the political agenda, regardless of all other concerns.
Thank you so much, René, and also from your long-standing experience, you could really give some very clear examples and clear on, what could go wrong again in the upcoming years to go and what our priorities should be. Very interesting for the discussion, certainly, most certainly. So I would now like to have a look into the room who would like to enter into the discussion? And also, Jan, if you want to come in, please signal, then you can get the floor as well. You would like to? Please.
Yes, thank you. In the agenda, I have to make the conclusions. I don't want to make the conclusion before the debate, which is the old tradition, where the conclusion is written before. But if I can add something as the participant, using the possibility that the Commission hasn't come, and we up to now, after the introduction of Lambert, we were concentrated in general of the energy policy of EU, energy policy and energy safety, etc., with a very interesting and controversial thesis in this debate. I'm coming from Poland, and we are, as you know very well, that among all these things we are counting on the EPP of protecting our attitude vis-à-vis the shale gas, seeing the danger of the green lobbying against it, and this is about safety. But today's debate is mainly about cities and regions. And I think this is one of the important elements that we should think more and more about complementarity between different European policies. It's not that the one policy can be separated from another. It's not that we have a transport policy, the energy policy, the social policy, and we have the cohesion policy, which is something special and outside. I mean, very often it happened, but now, especially now when we were preparing the new perspective, I think it's very clear that we were trying our best to make it complementary, using the good examples which have been mentioned by Lambert, like, for example, Convent of Mayors, which was very interesting and, of course, symbolic. But, of course, we have to remember that the city who declared to reduce the CO2 emission, they obliged themselves to prepare the strategic energy plan, and which is very difficult to be achieved. And of course, this strategic plan for the cities using, for example, the ELENA funds, which is very limited, in fact, it provoked a very broad movement among these cities to change the situation. This is also the consequence of existing perspective 713, when we were trying to do, and the Commission did a lot of things during this period to promote it. But in the next period, 14-20, we have a lot of elements which are directly connected to the energy efficiency, CO2 emission, etc. We can find it in the report of Lena Kolarska-Bobinska, who is here in the room. So we have it that the element of energy efficiency is in fact one of the most important priority of the cohesion policy. The question is, do we see it as a complementary to the energy policy of EU? This is not two policies. This is one policy using different instruments. This is a question how to use the instrument of cohesion policy to reinforce the whole energy policy in the EU. This is especially about energy efficiency in the buildings. This is about the energy efficiency in the transport. This is about, in general, the climate change protection. We shouldn't forget that now we guaranteed in the regulations the minimum share for the different type of regions for the energy efficiency, which is high in the more developed regions than less developed regions, etc. So this is the whole package which has been prepared. This is about smart city and community initiative, which in fact surprisingly is going only with the DG Energy and not DG Regio. This is quite interesting, but this is very typical for European administration that we are making the sectorization of different policies. But I think this is a very interesting element now. So I think that we should stress during this conference, and this is my element of my introduction here in this before making the conclusion, is that either we will think about the different policies which are complementary, and we will use all the possible instruments to achieve our goals, or we will make different sectorial policies, and it will be completely inefficient. Of course, we cannot separate the energy efficiency in the buildings and to separate it from the general common energy policy in Europe. But this is complementary. And I think it should be seen by all the politicians and all the commissioners that we don't have, for example, one commissioner for climate change, one commissioner for energy, one commissioner for the cohesion policy, and we have 3 different policies. No, I think they are. As far as I remember, we have one college. We have one college in the EU, and we have one EU in general policy. And the question is how to play different pianos and to use very interesting goals. I think we are ready to do it. The question is, do we believe that we can do it? And are we aware that we will use all the instruments very efficiently? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jan. And indeed, everyone speaks on binding targets, but what we need first is binding coordination. That's at least one of the priorities for the EPP in the upcoming roadmap. Manfred Weber, you asked for the floor, please.
Ja, Corinne, meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren, ich möchte drei kurze Fragen stellen. Das erste ist in der Frage der Energieeffizienz. Wir sind uns alle einig, dass wir Energieeffizienz brauchen. Und als EVP haben wir aber zusätzlich auch sozusagen die Überschrift, die Headline über unsere Arbeit. Europa soll sich um die großen Fragen kümmern und raushalten aus den kleinen. Ich habe zurzeit Bürger, die bei mir anfragen, warum jetzt Europa die Energieverbrauchswerte vom Staubsauger regeln will und sich um diese Fragen kümmern will. Und deswegen im Ziel sind wir uns alle einig, wir brauchen Energieeffizienz. Ich hätte mal die Frage an die Runde, ob es denn wirklich richtig ist, dass Europa zentral sich um die Verbrauchswerte vom Staubsauger kümmert. Diese Fragen Frage der Subsidiarität ist damit verbunden. Zweite Frage Richtung Russland-Türkei. Ich bin selbst Innenpolitiker, Justizfragen, die mich bewegen. Und mit Russland und der Türkei habe ich in diesen Fällen extreme Probleme, wenn es um Rechtsstaatlichkeit geht, wenn es um Grundrechte geht. Das muss sicher in der Balance stehen zwischen strategischen Interessen und der Energieversorgung. Mich würde da konkret interessieren, weil Sie angesprochen haben, Herr van der Linden, dass Rotterdam jetzt den Flüssigterminal für Gas gebaut hat. Glauben Sie, dass diese Entwicklung Flüssiggas, diese neuen Gasfelder, die wir global weltweit finden, die Amerikaner entwickeln mit Fracking, glauben Sie, dass die zu einer wirklich relevanten Diversifizierung unserer Gasversorgung führen können? Können wir unabhängiger werden von Russland und diesen Strömen? Oder ist es nur der Tropfen auf den heißen Stein, der das vielleicht noch ergänzen kann? Und das Letzte, vielleicht an die gesamte Runde. Wir sind uns alle einig, dass wir europäische Energiepolitik brauchen. Nur müsste jemand mal den Mut haben zu sagen, was denn das konkret bedeutet. Weil wenn natürlich Deutschland sagt, wir wollen keine Atomkraft, wenn Frankreich massiv in der Atomkraft tätig ist, das Problem ist ja, wie schaut dann diese europäische Energiepolitik aus? Was gibt Europa vor? Welche Standards gibt Europa vor? Es kann nicht nur sein, dass Europa dann den Wettbewerb regelt. Das ist ja im Binnenmarkt sowieso das Einfachste sozusagen, sondern es geht dann aber auch um die Ausgestaltung, wie diese Energiepolitik ausschaut. Und das ist ja das, was uns davor zurückschrecken lässt, dass es nicht gelingt, eine europäische Energiepolitik zu machen, weil keiner die Deutungshoheit verlieren will, wie er die Energie in seinem Land sicherstellen will. Das ist eigentlich der zentrale Punkt und deswegen, wenn wir ehrlich sind, müssen wir dann auch eine Diskussion führen, wie die Energieversorgung in Europa ausschaut und ob wir da einen Konsens erreichen, ist dann der Kern. Das ist dann die Kernfrage, ob es uns gelingt, auch europäische Energiepolitik zu entwickeln.
Thank you, Manfred. Next is Werner Lange. Werner, please.
Ja, vielen Dank. Ich habe den Eindruck, und da gehen meine Fragen hin, dass sich die Prioritäten in der Energiepolitik in den letzten 5 Jahren deutlich verschoben haben. Die Gründe sind genannt worden. Wir diskutieren intern in Europa an erster Stelle längst nicht mehr über die Klimaverträglichkeit. Wir formulieren zwar noch Ziele, Energieeffizienz, CO2 und erneuerbare Energien, aber die Klimaverträglichkeit ist massiv in den Hintergrund geraten gegenüber der Versorgungssicherheit, bei der Europa keine großen Kompetenzen hat. Und insbesondere kommt neu auf die politische Agenda die Preiswürdigkeit, die Bezahlbarkeit, die Konkurrenz international, was die Energiepreise angeht. Wenn wir uns ansehen, dass die USA durch sinkende Gas- und Ölpreise nicht nur unabhängig werden von Importen im Jahre 2017, sondern auch Anreize für energieintensive Industrien bieten, die sie bisher nicht bieten konnten, dann ist hier ein Prozess im Gange, der uns wachrütteln muss, meine ich. Und wenn ich in die Energiepolitik meines eigenen Staates sehe, da hat man die Atomkraftwerke in einem Zeitraum in ein Abschaltprogramm gegeben. Okay, das kann man machen, obwohl die Gründe in Fukushima menschenverursachte Gründe waren überwiegend. Und trotzdem hat man Förderprogramme installiert, die zu enormen Preiserhöhungen führen. Und die Folge ist, dass unsere polnischen Freunde wollen den Windstrom nicht, den Deutschland überschüssig produziert, weil sie ihre eigenen Kraftwerke nutzen wollen. Und die Niederländer, das waren schon immer gute Händler, die wollen noch Geld dafür, dass sie unseren Windstrom nehmen. Und so ist es passiert, dass bei uns die Energiepreise um 6 Cent pro Kilowattstunde, die Strompreise gestiegen sind, in den Niederlanden um bis zu 5 Cent gefallen sind. Ja, bis zu 5 Cent, das ist das Resultat. Und ich erlebe Mittelständler, die jetzt überlegen, ist die Niederlande noch groß genug für neue Investments oder sind die schon so dicht bevölkert, dass wir unsere Betriebe dort nicht mehr hin verlagern können? Das heißt, diese weltweiten Veränderungen, das ist die Frage an alle. Energieeffizienz, eine Herausforderung für Unternehmen. Sie haben das geschildert, wie Philips das angeht. Die Energieversorgungssicherheit, eine große, weltweit umspannende Frage. Wie aber sichern wir die Wettbewerbsfähigkeit wichtiger Branchen, die unseren Wohlstand sichern?
Thank you. Well, you will get a response, I can assure you. And otherwise, I will add later. Thank you very much, Werner. Next is Alois Peterle, please. Alois.
Thank you, Corinne. I'm really pleased that we have the chance today to speak about energy in the cities, and we are full of, I would say, key words about pollution, but the light pollution is not considered as a big issue, as a major issue. I think it could be, and what was said by Mr. Kuyen, I think was very illustrative, very clear, and we underestimate this part of the pollution. And I think we should be more attentive to the outdoor lighting in the cities. There is an ideology that each village should be enlightened all the night, and as we see, not only during the night. No? And I studied a little bit this issue. I think that I read somewhere that half of the light goes to the sky. The stars don't need light, even the earth not so much. So I think that there is a clear area where we can undertake something. We don't need new research, we don't need innovation, we need to use the knowledge we dispose with. And we could definitely save a lot of energy. And in Slovenia we were able to adopt some regulation or a law on that, and now the mayors are more attentive to that and try to enlighten only what is necessary, not the sky. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have more speakers on the list, but maybe it's interesting to first give the panelists the floor, René van der Linden and Walter van Kuijen, and then return to you. Please, René, please give some response.
Darf ich zuerst mal Herrn Weber antworten? Ich verstehe das, was Sie sagen. Selbstverständlich. Wenn man so lange im Europarat die wichtigste Menschenrechtenorganisationen in der Welt mit einem eigenen Gerichtshof gearbeitet hat, ist das selbstverständlich ein Schwerpunkt. Aber die Frage ist, wie können wir Fortschritt machen auf dem richtigen Weg? Das machen wir nicht, wenn wir den anderen immer belehren und in der Ecke stellen. Das haben wir zu viel gemacht. Da kann man ich habe da viel Erfahrung mit und die Diskussion mit beiden Ländern. Und selbstverständlich, ich bin einverstanden, dass es da schwere Menschenrechtsverletzungen gibt. Ich habe mit Polskowskaja, wenn sie ermordet ist und so weiter, habe ich alles mit zu tun gehabt. Und ich finde auch, dass das ein Schwerpunkt sein soll. Aber eine strategische Allianz bedeutet viel mehr. Und eine strategische Allianz bedeutet, dass man arbeitet in Vertrauen und dass man arbeitet in einem breiten Themen, nicht nur Menschenrechte, Wirtschaft, Innovation, technologischer Austausch, Kunst und Kultur und Universitäten. Und das machen wir zu wenig. Ich bin selber Zeuge von was geschehen ist damals mit der Ukraine. Das waren nicht nur die Ukraine. Wenn man nicht zahlt und lange nicht zahlt, da kommt einmal ein Moment, dass man sagt, wenn sie nicht weiter zahlen, dann hört das auf. Und da weiß Russland, die Europäische Union hat gesagt, sie müssen marktkonforme Preise zahlen, weil die Düngermittel, die in Weißrussland produziert wurden in dieser Zeit, die kommen auf den Weltmarkt zu Spottpreisen, Dumpingpreisen. Und da haben sie die Preise erhöht und haben wir gesagt, sie nützen die Energie als ein politisches Instrument. Ich finde, das hat zwei Seiten. Und deswegen bleibt mein Plädoyer, dass wir eine strategische Allianz machen. Aber die Europäische Union hat keine gemeinsame Position, wie sie mit Russland weiterfahren muss. Und das ist ein großes Problem. Und auch in der Vergangenheit hat Amerika zu großen Einfluss genommen auf die Position Europa, die Europäische Union, in Bezug auf Russland. Die Europäische Union soll eine Brücke spielen, Brücke machen zwischen Russland und Amerika. Und ich glaube, dass wir sind am besten in der Lage, das zu tun. Flüssiges Gas, ja. Ich war da, habe mit vielen Unternehmern gesprochen, englische Unternehmer, niederländische, selbstverständlich, und auch Norwegen. Das ist eine riesige Entwicklung. Und wir haben viel mehr Gas jetzt wie vor 10 Jahren. Und die Technologie, das Gas zu finden, hat enorm zugenommen. Schau mal nach Israel, schau mal nach Zypern, schau mal heutzutage sogar in Albanien, wo man nie gedacht hat, es ist etwas da. Und deswegen glaube ich persönlich, dass LNG, flüssiges Gas, eine wichtige Rolle spielt in die Zukunft. Das nimmt 4, 5, 6, 7 Jahre. Ja, das ist klar. Noch zu den Menschenrechten. C'est le temps qui fait la musique. Und wir haben die falsche Ton. Nicht immer. Und in den Niederlanden, ich habe viel Probleme mit meiner eigenen Partei. Immer den Finger hoch. Man soll zusammenarbeiten und nicht konfrontieren. Und in Zusammenarbeit kommt man viel weiter. Und da muss man klare Stellungen haben. Natürlich, man kann Menschenrechtsverletzungen nicht unter den Tisch stellen. Aber wie geht man damit um? Und wenn man es macht, weil man selber große Publizität bekommen will, dann ist das die falsche Methode. Dann Werner Lange. Ich glaube, dass meine kurze Einführung klar war. Wie sichern wir die Wettbewerbsfähigkeit? Das ist eine Kernfrage. Wenn wir in Europa sprechen über die Bekämpfung von Jugendarbeitslosigkeit, wenn wir Arbeit als eine der höchsten Prioritäten sehen, dann kann man nicht vorbeigehen an die Bedingungen, die für uns die Industrie braucht, um auch Arbeitsplätze zu schaffen. Und da kann man nicht die Augen schließen, dass es heutzutage Multinationals gibt, auch in den Niederlanden, die sagen, ich glaube, dass wir die nächsten Investitionen in Amerika machen. Und wenn wir da die Augen schließen, dann machen wir eine falsche Politik für unsere Wähler, unsere Bürger. Und man kann auch nicht sagen zu den Bürgern, wir wollen nur erneuerbare Energie, ohne dass wir den Bürgern sagen, es kostet etwas. Es kostet etwas. Und ich bin einverstanden, man soll etwas mehr zahlen dafür, weil es auch große Vorteile hat im Klimaschutz. Und selbstverständlich, es ist so, dass es soll eine Komplementarität geben. Energieeffizienz ist noch wichtiger wie Energiebesparung. Es führt zu Energiebesparung. Aber Energieeffizienz heißt auch Wettbewerbsfähigkeit verstärken.
Thank you. Mr. Walter van Keyen, please, your response.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Weber, energy labels for vacuum cleaners. It sounds ridiculous. I understand where you come from. I would like to make two remarks, though. I think consumers, citizens around Europe should have an ability to make a choice. So we have energy labels for cars, we have energy labels for all electronic equipment. The one piece that was missing, I don't know why, was vacuum cleaners. And the companies were competing on watts, not the result of the cleaning. So I look at this and I agree with you. Sounds ridiculous. I think it's just an inclusion of an energy label that will allow consumers to make a balanced choice. Secondly, and I think more importantly, your remarks about the energy efficiency debate. The infrastructure in buildings, and I'll give you that, I was particular, not making a remark about energy efficiency in general, because I think as Europe, our industries have done a lot in becoming more efficient than our global competitors. And I recognize that. But there is this section of the industry that is particularly related to the debate here, cities and regions, when we talk about infrastructures, when we talk about renovation of buildings, where we are lacking behind, both to the commitments that we've made ourselves, to ourselves, as well as, therefore, not creating an ability to become or create competitive industries in Europe. And just, if we would live up to our own commitments, we would save about 28 billion euros of energy consumption each year. So that is the relation to what was just said of energy efficiency versus savings. That is equivalent to 141 new energy plants across Europe, which in themselves would require an investment of 300 billion euros. I mean, that is the type of debate we should be having. And that is also the fast payback time that I see for simple investments in energy efficiency, where the German budget department actually said that it pays back within a year, and the return on investment is fantastic. Mr. Langen, you talked about the connection with social security and energy saving, and the global competitiveness, which was also addressed just now. We're indeed a global company. We operate in, and I added it up, 172 countries around the globe, obviously in all 28 European countries. For us, the world is where we compete. And yes, we would like to look at Europe as the internal market. To put things in perspective, Philips still generates more than half of our innovation intellectual property in Europe. And there's a reason for that. And we would like Europe to support companies like ours that will innovate sustainable solutions to support us by connecting the instruments that Mr. Olbrich talked about. Infrastructure, city, the cohesion funds, and, for example, Horizon 2020 and the programming thereof. That would make us and create an ability for us to compete globally. And that's why we believe the internal market, for that reason, is so important for a company like ours. And then to your point of why should cities, Mr. Peterle, why should cities be lit all day, all night? Well, there are different solutions, and I refer to smart cities, smart city controls. In Tilburg, in the Netherlands, we installed in a particular section of the city energy lighting on demand solutions. Because there's also this topic of security. When I now enter the A2 back to the south where I live, lights are off. I think it's dangerous. But that city lighting on demand solution provides light whenever there are citizens. And that provides the security and safety that our citizens are also looking for. That section of lighting, that section of the city in Tilburg, by implementing these solutions, saved 50% of their energy bill. So you can still have light when you need it, but it's not on all the time. I think we have to team up on these types of solutions. So thank you for that question.
Thank you so much, Walter. And we are so proud on Philips because this is really an innovative industry we can keep in Europe. I know the discussions and the debates in the Netherlands when light bulb production plants were closed down, and then it was said, "Oh, our industry will vanish to China." But we don't produce any light bulbs anymore here in the Netherlands or anywhere in Europe. But you provide us with more jobs in the Netherlands and in Europe than ever before. So it's very interesting also to hear your very inspiring example. Thank you, Walter. I suggest to turn for another round of speakers and then ask the panelists for a final round. We have Mr. Kelly, Mrs. McGuinness, Mrs. Lulling and Mrs. Kolarska-Bobinska, and I would like to close down the list. All right? We start with Sean Kelly. Please, Sean.
Thank you very much. Energy and the supply of energy and energy efficiency, I think, is something that's going to dominate us, especially at Parliament in the next legislature, as much as the economic crisis in this. And one of the things that I find intriguing is the fact, as you pointed out, that for every euro you spend in energy savings, you get a return of 4. Now, if I said to somebody, give me €1 and I'll give you back 4, everybody would do it. So why isn't it happening, and what do we need to do at European level to make it happen? That's the first question. The second question is, there's absolute confusion across Europe regarding the types of energy we should have. Lambert pointed out building coal-fired stations and closing gas. In other places, building gas and possibly closing coal. In other countries, building nuclear and phasing out nuclear. So consumers are totally confused, and that has led to enormous scaremongering in any countries where they're trying to bring in particularly new energy methods, because they will point to the country that's phasing it out and doesn't want it. So I think we need some type of irrefutable, independent, scientific evidence on all these supplies sources, on their benefits, maybe some disadvantages, but at least some analysis of saying that, okay, you can put in a nuclear power station, but you're not going to all die immediately of cancer. You can put up pylons, but you're not all going to die of cancer, because we have a big issue in Ireland on that at the minute. People are scared of pylons, which need to be put up. But the scaremongering has taken over, and it's all because of the absence, I think, of what I would call irrefutable, independent scientific evidence. That's something we need badly in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Myriad McGuinness. Myriad.
Thank you, Chairman. I raised this energy question yesterday because I really think it's such an important debate that is not really loud enough. And not joined up. So thank you to all of the speakers who've addressed it. I sense from Renee that you feel there is an overemphasis on renewables, and certainly I think you may be right in that regard, because they still contribute so little, and yet much of the debate is around renewables. I'm also not clear of the views of the other panellists about renewable energies and the role of them. So I'd be interested for a little bit more detail on the place of renewables. I have a sense in which public support for renewables is waning, both from the cost perspective that you've mentioned, but also because of the visibility of wind turbines and the need for extra grid connections. So a comment or two on that would be quite helpful. Second question around public procurement, and I think it was a comment from Philip's spokesperson. What's happening there? Do we have a sense in which governments, some are good at this, some are bad? Is there best practice? Is there a leader in the field in Europe in terms of green procurement and the look for efficiency? Could you repeat for me those figures that you said around, is it true that 28 billion savings is possible through energy efficiency, which is the equivalent of 141 new energy plants, costing 300 billion to build? I think we should really get that figure out there, because that's quite an extraordinary fact as you have it now, and people need to understand that. And last point, who will lead this debate around for public consumption about energy? Because it only is discussed when there's a crisis, when the power lines fail. So who is going to lead the debate? Thank you.
Thank you, Myriad. Next is Astrid Lulling. Astrid, please.
Ja, vielen Dank. Ich werde versuchen, Deutsch zu sprechen. Ich glaube, es ist kein Franzose mehr da. Ich möchte zunächst einmal sagen, dass ich mir gewünscht hätte, dass mehr Kollegen aus unserer Fraktion, insbesondere die vernünftigen Ausführungen von René van der Linden gehört hätten, denn die Minderheit in unserer Fraktion, die noch für so vernünftige Überlegungen über Energiepolitik zugänglich sind, die wird immer kleiner.
That supports such a sensible approach to energy policy, but that minority is shrinking steadily. The European Union cannot save the world. We're too small to do that. Have we realized that, though? Do we realize that we could deliver a killer blow to our industry and still not save the global climate?
Noch immer und eine immer größere Mehrheit haben.
In our group, though, there is a growing majority that would like to ban everything.
Bitte?
Man braucht nur gesundes Bauernvernunft.
We just need sensible farmer logic.
Diese Bauernvernunft
in
unserer Fraktion ist schon eine
plain talking and farmer logic, unfortunately, is now part of the minority, a shrinking minority within our group.
Sehr, sehr gefährlich, und ich
I believe that this is extremely dangerous, and I would agree with everything that you have said and that Werner Langen has said. I read yesterday in the German press that the rising energy prices will make things tough for the European Union. We will see a loss in sectors where goods are produced at high energy costs, very energy-intensive industries.
Der EU-Importe und bei einem Fünftel der Preise in Japan. Und deshalb
really
ist es
struggle here compared to the US and Japan.
Wird, dass der Anteil der EU
it is
an den
predicted
Exporten
that EU share
Güter
of export of energy-intensive goods will drop by 10% by 2030.
Alles das beachten wir nicht.
But we're ignoring such statistics in our discussions. And I just wanted to flag this because I'm so very disappointed. Perhaps we might have got a majority of 1 or 2 votes on backloading, but the self-appointed climate protection experts believe that CO2 emissions trading should be even more expensive. So I really do wonder, is this part of our group's remit? Are we trying to play catch-up with the Greens and the left on energy policy? What do we need to do to ensure that we can muster enough people in our group to demonstrate such farmers' logic and such a pragmatic approach, we need to realise that Europe is losing out on energy. So tell us, what can we do to ensure that our group, which always loses out in plenary, could remain united so that it would not lose out in such votes? I really am tearing my hair out. I don't believe that this is our group's job. We shouldn't be issuing bans left, right and centre and undercutting and damaging our industries and growth.
I hope it was not the dinner of yesterday night which turned you in such a pessimistic views, but yeah. Well, we will ask the panelists to respond to you later, Astrid. Mrs. Kolarska-Bobinska.
Thank you very much. Maybe I will speak in Polish. Pan René van der Linden wspomniał, że Rosja chcemy strategicznego partnerstwa z Rosją, musimy sobie nawzajem ufać, że to jest kluczowe. Ja chcę powiedzieć, że w tej chwili to nie jest kwestia o braku lub nie braku zaufania. W tej chwili od dłuższego czasu trwają rozmowy Komisji Europejskiej z Rosją dotyczące Energy Chapter. Ja bardzo dokładnie śledzę te negocjacje i mogę powiedzieć, że to się nie rozbija o brak zaufania, to się rozbija zwyczajnie o brak tego, że Rosja nie chce zaakceptować naszego trzeciego pakietu energetycznego. Rosja nie chce uznać obowiązujących w Europie praw. Więc pytanie jest, jak mamy negocjować i zawierać agreements z kimś, kto po prostu nie uznaje naszych przepisów. Już nie wspominam kwestii praw obywatelskich, które są bardzo ważną wartością w Unii Europejskiej. Mówię o zwyczajnym przestrzeganiu praw. Teraz proszę poczekać jeszcze miesiąc, dwa. Komisja opublikuje swoje dokumenty dotyczące dochodzenia antymonopolistycznego wobec Rosji i będą one dosyć dramatyczne dla tego kraju i tej firmy. I nie znowu dlatego, że my nie mamy zaufania, tylko dlatego, że ta firma nie przestrzega naszej podstawowej polityki jasnych reguł. Więc możemy sobie nawoływać, ale tu nie chodzi o nawoływanie, tylko chodzi o pewne zobowiązania i pewne ustawy. Drugi punkt to jest, wydaje mi się, że jesteśmy w bardzo takim trudnym sytuacji rozchwiania polityki energetycznej w Europie. I tak bym to właśnie określiła jako rozchwianie, bo każdy kraj podejmuje bardzo ważne, zasadnicze decyzje dotyczące energy mixu i ma prawo do tego, ale jednocześnie na poziomie europejskim mówi, moja polityka jest okej, ale polityka innego kraju nie bardzo. Na przykład mieliśmy przed chwilą taką sytuację. Pan senator wspominał, dlaczego nie mamy mieć nuclear energy we wszystkich krajach Unii Europejskiej, pomyślmy jakby zamknąć, prawda? Ale Francja ma prawo do tego. Niemcy podjęły całkowicie inną decyzję. Więc teraz niektóre kraje mówią gaz łupkowy. Nie, my nie chcemy totalne moratorium. I to jest właściwie ich prawo, ale one jednocześnie wpływają na tworzenie legislacji europejskiej, która zabrania innym krajom, które mają prawo do wydobywania gazu łupkowego w swoim energy mixie. Więc jest to z jednej strony swoboda kształtowania własnego energy mixu, ale z drugiej strony wychodzenie na górę do Europy po to, żeby za pomocą prawa europejskiego, wpływów europejskich dyscyplinować inne kraje i zmuszać do prowadzenia polityki w naszym kierunku. I ostatni punkt, myślę, że to jest ważne, to co Jan Olbrycht mówił, żeby wykorzystać w tej chwili tą ogromną szansę, jaka jest efektywność energetyczna, bo to jest EPP prowadzi politykę i ma na sztandarach obywatela. Chcę powiedzieć, że energia efficiency to jest właśnie kładzie decyzje energetyczne w ręce obywateli i obywateli jako i producentów, ale i obywateli prowadzących tą oszczędnościową politykę energetyczną. Także musimy tutaj wokół tego też zbudować dużo większe poparcie. Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. Before we give the floor to Jan Olbrycht for the closing remarks, I would like to ask the panelists to briefly respond to the questions. And following what Myriad McGuinness and Astrid Lulling said about the EPP Group, I would like to give you the opportunity to give us some advices in the upcoming discussion on the 2030 agenda. Everyone agrees that we need a binding target for CO2. But do we also need a binding target on energy efficiency, on renewables, all three? Do they really have to be binding, or should there be flexibility in? Should it only be objectives? Should we focus on the measures? You could, in short, give us some advice that might be interesting for our further debate. We start with Lambert. A maximum 2 minutes, please, okay. Lambert.
First of all, to look to the competences of European Union, it's true that the change in the Lisbon Treaty is that we now have a shared competence on the energy policy fields. And this was not the case before, and I think we did not rethink this enough. And I have a high expectation on the Oettinger report that will come out and the March summit that will be on this subject. The conclusion today should be that we underuse, we spoil the European competences there, and we have to shift this, especially as EPP. Second thing, how to change your instruments, especially in investments, revolving funds, looking to these effects of energy efficiency, the positive effects that have been calculated. We have to bring in the European Investment Bank possibilities to go and to bring in these possibilities, maybe guarantees to get the public authorities, to get industries in to take this advantage. Then the point about what of course was said by Astrid Lulling, no. I think we have to not to talk about the Greens and that we go greener than the Greens. Look to the ALDE, look to the VVD in this country. They are really following the Greens like in a hurdle, you know. They do it, and they say that they have a view on industrialization, on how to keep the jobs in Europe, and they don't. They even have left their position to have a view on the combination of industrialization and the climate targets. And then the last point that you raised about what to do. First of all, let's say we just started with the aims for energy efficiency, etc. And in 2016, the first time, we will have an overview of what the countries did. And we heard from the Philips company today that a lot of countries did not even do anything in this energy efficiency plan. They did not bring up proposals. And in our legislation, there is that if in 2016 they did not come up with good proposals to take this low-hanging fruit, as we debated today, then there will be an obligation. So if these kind of measures, the voluntary measures that we did, had succeeded, we might go over to a general CO2-driven system. But I'm not convinced. I like really much concrete and maybe obligated targets. Otherwise, crisis and 1,000 other reasons bring countries and bring partners not to the safety for investment. We need safety for investment for the longer run. This is what we need, so not vague things in the sky. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lambert. René, please.
Very brief. First, it's important that for each policy we confront our citizens with the consequences. Too often we have an opinion, a policy, and later, 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, our citizens are confronted with the consequences in employment, in climate change, in prices. So if we talk about renewables, also this has to be in the part of the debate. On Russia, it's much more. A strategic alliance is much more than only energy. And I understand the energy charter. It's in our interest. But Russia has the other interest too. If you look to agribusiness, to innovation, to research. So I believe that if you negotiate, you cannot, let's say, force them to accept everything we want to see implemented. So this is a negotiation. And to my mind, this has also to do with trust and confidence. And there is a lack of trust. A lack of trust in certain countries of the European Union and a lack of trust on the Russian side. And my point is that the strategic alliance with Russia is on the long run of extreme importance for the stability on our continent in many aspects. And for that reason, it's our neighbor. For that reason, it's for me a priority in the future for the whole European Union. And it's not only Russia who is one of the players in this game who has shortages. Also, the European Union has really certain shortages in the negotiations.
Thank you. Walter van Kuijen, please.
Yes. First of all, again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. And there are two questions, Mr. Kelly and Mr. McGuinness, that I will answer to you separately, the request for more details. Your question, Corine, about the CO2, well, let's call it a single target or 3 targets. Or two, or whatever. Hopefully, and I think that was my intent, I was able to inspire you by examples of what we can do when we connect all of the available instruments, the innovation capabilities, the entrepreneurs in Europe. By connecting everything we have, we can make a difference. So for me, this is not a single, a double or a triple debate. It's a balanced debate. And I've been very specific, not on 1 or 2 numbers or targets, but on this is a type of industry that we could focus on and could make a difference for Europe. And I personally believe from my business background, in a very simple phrase, what gets measured gets done. So if we don't set targets, there's a high likelihood it will not get done. In general, what I'm calling for is basically we have to start to believe that we can. There's no reason for pessimism, which I heard. We have to be out there. The world is turning on us. I mean, next year, 27 of our 28 member states will show growth. There's a new opportunity for us to show inspiration, to stimulate new entrepreneurship, and for you and us to show leadership in this debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we will pick up the glove, I can assure you. Jan, please, could you bring us your closing remarks and what you picked up from the debate this morning, please?
Yes, thank you. First, it's not very surprising that the topic of our panel was much more on cities and regions, and reality was not only about cities, because today the main interest of everybody, including cities and regions, is concentrated on general energy issues. So it's not by chance that we were jumping from the level of cities to the level of global level. So that's first, the panelists, they show the global context and the situation of the independence of the EU, US in some years in terms of energy, and of course relation to the production of gas, and the situation of EU vis-à-vis United States and EU versus Russia. And I think that supporting what Lena Kolarska-Bobinska said, that I think that it's not the problem of lack of trust, as you said, in some of the member states. This is the very clear appeal to the EU. Let's be very realistic with Russia, realistic and pragmatic, and it will give a very good results. strategic, yes, and let's understand the methods they use. And let's be very realistic with them. And I see this is the way to have the strategic agreement in some years or generations. But the real problem, what appeared, and I think this was the question of Sean Kelly, but it was this kind of summary, was this is the confusing about the what it really is, energy policy of EU. Is it about the energy safety? Or is it about the type of production which is promoted by EU? Do we have the EU policy concerning the type of production, or do we have as Manfred Weber said, the problem of concurrence, competition, and of course the questions of independence in the choice concerning the mix? There are no clear answer today, and we are today in a different situation than 2 months ago or 1 year ago in the EPP meetings. Because 1 year ago, our way of talking was different. Today is the question who will allow whom to do something and who is good for Europe. What is good for Europe? What is bad for Europe? Is nuclear power good for Europe? Not only for France or for Germany. Is it good for Europe or is it not good for Europe? Is shale gas good for Europe or is it not good for Europe? And this is confusing. And I think this should be one of the main questions, because the citizens, they will not be interested in the European institutions. But each of the inhabitants will be interested in the prices. In the prices. Each of the SMEs will be interested in the prices of energy and in the prices of product. So I think we should not discuss what about the energy policy of EU. But is it clear that we have one position in EU before the elections? Because the Greens, they will have the clear position. The Socialists, they are much more flexible. They will take the position of Greens if they want. The question is if we take the position of Greens or not, some of us. So I think this is very important, confusing, and this should be one of the conclusions of this. This is one of the main challenges. And of course, going to the practice, do we believe that the citizens can do also some elements, make a choice? Do we give them the instruments? And we have these instruments in the cohesion policy. We have the funds now. We have the possibility to promote it on the city level, where is the main production of energy or consumption of energy in the world. There are the instruments, and I think it should also be distributed among us. These are the instruments in the cohesion policy about the energy efficiency building. In transport, we have this instrument. We have just created it. We will vote next week. Next week we will vote it, and we will have the instruments. And I think that this is also important, a very clear message for everybody. And so what I was trying before, and to show that there is a link between the general energy policy of EU and the energy efficiency on the citizens level. And the complementarity of the European policies is absolutely urgent. We cannot have Horizon 2020 which go one way and the energy efficiency will go another way. And everybody will be satisfied and nobody from the practitioners will read any report for what we are paying a lot of money. So I think the complementarity of policy is also because we should not only save energy, we should also save people's money. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yesterday we discussed the populists. Today it's about the Greens, but the conclusion in both cases is the same. We have to define and should be confident that we can define our own policies and that we should be proud on that. So self-confidence also in this respect. And I'm sure we can. Thank you so much for inspiring you with your great contributions. I would like to thank the colleagues for taking part in this debate, and now there's time for a coffee before we start with the next panel. Thank you all.
Colleagues, we will start in 10 seconds, but I shall not do a countdown, and I'm hoping someone will communicate with those colleagues that are outside enjoying some coffee and food that we will start the food debate in 2 seconds. Okay. Good morning, everyone. The 10 seconds have elapsed, so we are to start now our debate. We've just finished a very interesting debate on energy, and I think we are continuing a debate on energy because it's about energy for humanity, about food, both quantity but importantly quality of food, both for the European Union and indeed the world. So I'm very happy to be chairing this part of our proceedings. I have a particular interest in agriculture, food and the environment and those interlinked issues. So let me just briefly introduce our speakers and then we will go straight to business, if I may. In order on my paper here, I have Albert Jan Maat, who's president of Copa Cogeca, the European Farmers Federation, and a former colleague and a former very good colleague, and I'm so pleased to be sharing a platform with you this morning. To our left, as you know, our good colleague Esther de Lange, who will conclude our proceedings today and who has an important report going through Parliament on food fraud. On my right, Gerda Verburg, who is the permanent representative of the Netherlands at the FAO and chair of the Committee on World Food Security and a former Minister for Agriculture for the Netherlands. And my colleague on my right here, Sofia Kukovic, who is a member of the European Parliament's Environment, Public Health and Food Safety Committee with a particular interest in this issue. So we have an excellent panel of speakers and I'm looking forward to hearing first from Albert Jan Maat, if you would take the floor, please. Thank you.
First, a few remarks in English and then I'll do it in my native tongue. Albert Jan Maat, I'm a former colleague of you and I'm president of the Dutch Farmers Union. You are a guest in the Netherlands now, and agriculture is big business in Holland because it's 10% of the economy. We are the biggest export sector, and the agriculture sector has an economic viewpoint from 80 billion a year. The Dutch Farmers Union, about 70% of the Dutch farmers is member of the Dutch Farmers Union. And we are in charge for 80% of the production. For us, for the next 10 years, it's very important that we want to produce more with less energy and the use of less natural resources. That's our program for the next 10 years. And we have this program for the dairy sector, for the vegetable sector and the flower sector. So for us, there's just one word, a key word, and that's sustainable farming. That's the most important part for us in the next future. I will speak tomorrow here for you as president of COPA. And for COPA, it's really important for the next 5 years that sustainable farming is the key. It's the same for Holland and a lot of other countries. That's our start position, pole position. Second is that we need a European Parliament that is working, stimulating for farming. That's really important. And for that, for me, it's a big honor to be a speaker for you here. And I hope that we can have a decent discussion on that. We prepared our contribution this morning in Dutch for COPA. And I know there's also still in Parliament that you're all speaking in your native tongue, so I will do it on the European part in Dutch. Dank je. Het allerbelangrijkste voor COPA voor de komende 5 jaar in Europa is dat wij de mogelijkheid krijgen om een betere positie te krijgen op de markt. Als je kijkt wat wereldwijd nodig is, dat betekent dat we in 1 generatie 70% meer voedsel moeten produceren. En dat moeten we doen met minder energie, minder grondstoffen. Want aan de ene kant is er schaarste aan voedsel, daarnaast schaarste aan energie en grondstoffen. En dat betekent voor Europa dat sterk is in land- en tuinbouw, maar niet sterk is in energie, niet sterk is in grondstoffen, dat het essentieel is dat we een omslag maken naar aanmerkelijk minder gebruik van natuurlijke hulpstoffen en energie. Dat is de essentie voor Europees landbouwbeleid zou het moeten zijn voor de komende 5 tot 10 jaar. Tegelijkertijd hebben we een voorsprong op onze collega's wereldwijd. Wij kennen een hoog niveau van milieubescherming. Wij kennen een hoog niveau van bescherming van het landschap. Wij kennen een zeer hoog niveau als we kijken naar voedselveiligheid. En natuurlijk hebben we schandalen gehad, voedselschandalen. Maar als er iets mis is met voedsel in Europa, is het een schandaal. Het is geen gewoonte. Dat is de essentie waar we ons goed op moeten blijven focussen. Nou, als we die vertrekpositie voor de Europese landen en tuinbouw nemen, als we kijken dat ondanks de economische crisis we een zeer welvarend deel van de wereld zijn. Als we ook zien dat de Europese consument bijzonder veel aandacht heeft op hoe wij produceren, dan geeft het ons kansen. Het geeft ons ook bedreigingen. Als blijkt dat importen in Europa niet aan hetzelfde eisen voldoen als de productie in Europa, maar tegelijkertijd hebben we een voorsprong op onze collega's, ook in de VS, in Canada en andere delen van de wereld, omdat wij gewend zijn dat wij kritische consumenten hebben. Dat houdt ons scherp en brengt ons op een pole position als je kijkt naar de wereldwijde uitdaging van 70% meer voedsel. Maar tegelijkertijd gedraagt Europa zich als het om landbouwbeleid gaat een tikkie als een oude man. Mopperend, rondkijkend, als we zelf maar voldoende te eten hebben. En dat heeft tot gevolg dat ons aandeel in de wereldvoedselproductie de afgelopen 25 jaar teruggelopen is. En het is goed dat er een eind komt aan de melkquotering. Maar wat nog veel belangrijker is, we hebben in Europa een geweldig klimaat. Natuurlijk regent het af en toe te veel, we hebben andere problemen, maar we hebben voldoende water. We hebben goede ondernemers, we hebben goede grond, een gematigd klimaat. En we zijn gewend om handel te drijven. En dat betekent dat geopolitiek, de Europese Unie, de komende 5 tot 10 jaar een groot speler zou moeten worden als het gaat om de wereld van voedsel te voorzien. In 2007 is de opstand in de Arabische wereld begonnen door relatief hoge voedselprijzen, soms tekorten. En dat heeft zich uitgerold in het Midden-Oosten. En op dit moment zijn onze buren instabiel. Ook om reden dat Europa te veel naar binnen gekeerd was en te weinig dacht aan de productie van voedsel en het exporteren. En de rest van de wereld verwacht van Europa de komende 5 tot 10 jaar dat wij weer een echte speler worden, een grote exporteur op voedsel. Op dit moment zijn we de grootste importeur wereldwijd van voedsel uit de ontwikkelingslanden. En daar moet een omslag in komen. Dat kunnen we op verschillende manieren doen. Om te beginnen ervoor te zorgen dat boeren en tuinders in Europa worden gefaciliteerd. Dat iedereen zich realiseert dat het beter is om duurzame landbouw via de markt te realiseren en niet met allerlei ingewikkelde regeltjes. Ik wijs even op de vorming van het landbouwbeleid zoals we het nu kennen. Daar zit zelfs een hele oude vergroeningsmaatregel in die er misschien zou kunnen leiden dat in Europa weer grond braakgelegd wordt. Terwijl de wereld verschilt om voedsel. Dat kan niet. Dat is de eerste opdracht van het Europese parlement bij de tussentijdsherziening in 2016-2017 om dat eruit te halen. Het tweede is, voor de Europese Volkspartij is het essentieel dat die verantwoordelijkheid neemt als toch nog steeds een drager van wat er op het Europese platteland gebeurt. Vele boeren en tuinders stemmen op u. Dat maakt ook een verplichting voor u. Dat betekent dat in de nieuwe periode er een sterke landbouwcommissaris zal moeten zijn. En ik mag geen politieke uitspraken doen waar die vandaan komt. Maar het zou ons niet slecht uitkomen als de Europese Volkspartij die post zou pakken. Het derde is, ik heb al aangegeven de positie van boeren en tuinders. Miljoenen in Europa. We hebben in feite 7 grote inkopers van voedsel in Europa.
Ik zal een voorbeeld uit mijn eigen land geven. Wij maken op dit moment afspraken met supermarkten dat wij op een hoog niveau produceren. Als je kijkt naar dierenwelzijn en milieu, maar de supermarkten ook alleen die producten zullen afnemen. En niet als het Argentijnse vlees even goedkoper is, even handig daar een deel van de productie weg te halen. Dus het is essentieel dat model wat we hebben. Als je bijvoorbeeld neemt Ierse rundvlees. Is het enige rundvlees in de wereld wat grotendeels, dieren grotendeels grootgebracht zijn met gras. En de enige manier om in de toekomst duurzaam ook in gebieden landbouw te bedrijven waar eigenlijk alleen gras kan groeien, is ervoor te zorgen dat het omgezet wordt in melk en vlees. Nou, die standaard, zoveel mogelijk hebben we in Europa. En ik kan andere voorbeelden noemen in de zuivel, in de groenteteelt. Maar het is essentieel dat de mededingingswetgeving zo wordt aangepast, dat boeren en tuinders zich kunnen verenigen en gezamenlijk afspraken kunnen maken met de supermarkten over hoe ze met elkaar produceren, wie die kosten betaalt. En dat betekent ook dat op dat punt het Europese parlement een zware opdracht heeft om ervoor te zorgen dat het mededingingsbeleid de komende 5 jaar stimulerend wordt in plaats van remmend. Want hoe dan ook, voor die 70% extra productie zullen we met elkaar moeten accelereren in een hoge versnelling. Het derde punt is, voor de komende 5 jaar lijkt me het punt van innovatie. Ik heb een hekel aan het woord, maar ik bedoel vernieuwing. Als we nu zien dat in Europa heel veel onderzoek gedaan wordt, maar tegelijkertijd de toepassing daarvan soms wel lastig is, we zorgen ervoor dat meer geld beschikbaar komt voor het gewone bedrijf, dat ze toegang krijgen op alles wat er aan vernieuwingen komt in de sector. Dat is niet alleen voor de land- en tuinbouw, ook voor het midden- en kleinbedrijf in Europa is dat essentieel. En het Europese parlement is tegen tolker van de bevolking, van de gewone ondernemer, van de gewone man, aan u de taak de komende 5 jaar voor te zorgen dat dat beleid matcht voor ondernemers. Als er aan die voorwaarden wordt voldaan met een landbouwbeleid wat stimuleert, dan ben ik van overtuigd dat Europa in de toekomst die rol kan gaan spelen. Want laten we eerlijk zijn, we werken op hoog niveau op land- en tuinbouw. Militair is Europa helaas nog steeds een dwerg. Wat mij betreft persoonlijk zou er veel meer ambitie mogen zijn op het terrein van defensie. Maar als we ons realiseren dat het item over 10 tot 15 jaar voldoende voedsel is wereldwijd, dan kan Europa weer een grote rol gaan spelen. Groter dan het nu doet internationaal en de wereld verwacht dat. Ik spreek uit ervaring. Ik ben voorzitter van Altio Nederland en daarnaast van Agriterra. Dat is een samenwerkingsverband met Nederlandse coöperaties en de Nederlandse landbouworganisatie. Wij werken samen met 40 boerenbonden wereldwijd. En de wereld wacht op onze kennis, wacht op het delen ervan en wacht erop dat wij nadrukkelijk onze rol spelen. En wij kunnen dat doen, niet door middel van hele grote bedrijven. Familiebedrijven op het Europese platteland kunnen die rol spelen. Kortom, we zijn geworteld in de samenleving. We hebben economische ambitie. En voor COPA, de Europese boerenorganisatie, de komende 5 tot 10 jaar is het duidelijk wat onze agenda is. Positief. En wij zoeken naar de samenwerking met het parlement. Wat niet remt, maar stimuleert. Wat ervoor zorgt dat duurzaamheid via de marktgestalte kan krijgen. En niet via allerlei lastige regeltjes. Dat betekent ook een hervorming van het nitraatbeleid, hervorming wellicht ook van het waterbeleid in Europa. Zorg ervoor dat de politieke tempo bij kan houden van de Europese boeren en tuinders. Die verduurzamen en het antwoord is nu in de politiek. Dank u wel.
And the answer is in policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. I think your focus on helping family farms is interesting because next year, 2014, is the International Year of Family Farming, so we will have a lot of debate on that. We move to our next speaker in the panel. Gerda Verburg, as I say, is the chair of the Committee on World Food Security, with a great deal of experience in agriculture, so we look forward to your wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Buongiorno. Good morning, good morgen, bonjour, goedemorgen. I will speak in English, if you don't mind. And the contribution of Albert-Jan Maat is very interesting. I think he is talking about sustainable farming. I'd like to talk about climate smart agriculture, but I will come on this issue later on in my contribution, because I have good news and I have a little bit sad news. As we speak, we produce already enough food to feed the world. Each of all 7.5 billion people in the world can be fed already by our production. So this is not a problem. And even better, we produce already enough to feed 9 billion people by 2050. That's the good news. Then what is the bad news? The bad news is that we spoil a lot of food. We spoil, as we speak, 1/3 of all produced food. 1/3. 33% of all food produced in the world is spoiled. And 50% of all the spoiled food is what we call food waste. It is before and around harvest. It is a lack of storage. It's a lack of the food chain, of the production of milk transformed into cheese, yogurt, butter, and all these kind of things. So it cannot be made sustainable. And it is a lack of good organization of local markets, because I don't know how it exactly is in the European Parliament. But we hear many NGOs about that we have to open the world market also for developing countries. Well, the reality is, and it's a sad reality, that many of farmers, the smallholders in the third world countries, are not even able to reach their own regional and local market. That's the truth. So let us start by opening or connect them to local markets. And then let's work on infrastructure, but also let us work on the quality of the food chain, the quality of processing of food, so that they can reach also the regional, the national market, regional market, and even the world market. So let us face the truth. 50% of all lost food is food waste. The other 50% is lost along the processing procedures, along the food chain. And this is a matter of industry, the food industry, and a matter of ourselves. We, as consumers, we spoil 20% of all food we buy in supermarkets, at regional markets, at the bakery or wherever. We spoil 20%. It means that if we go to the supermarket in a weekend and we buy 5 bags with food, we buy 1 bag to waste it. It's a lot of spoil, it's a lot of waste. So we have to recognize this first, and then we have to become aware of this, because once we are aware and once we feel responsible to show respect to the production of food, or to show respect to the environmental and climate impact, then we can make concrete steps. Okay, how can we overcome and how can we produce in a sustainable way? Within FAO, we have several names, but the essential issue is climate smart agriculture. And what is climate smart agriculture? It is producing more food with less use of seeds, less use of water, better use of plant protection, etc., and a good storage. So produce more with less, also less food losses, food losses. The second point is, once little farmers, smallholders, are able to produce more with less, and they can reach the markets and they can sell their products, they have more income. And what do farmers do? What do poor people do when they earn more money? First, of course, feed their family and feed themselves, and then they start schools. They start health care systems in their own, and so they develop their own livelihoods, their own villages. So that's the second win. And the third win is that if we do not produce less greenhouse gases, if we produce more with less, we are a good shepherd of all commodities, of landscapes, of water, etc. So it's a win-win-win. And let us continue to develop this approach, because where we are now is not the final position we can reach. And let us make use of universities, of good cooperation between researchers, know-how institutions, farmers, but also the private sector companies along the whole food chain, because only together we can solve the problem. And I know, probably also in the European Parliament, there are many members of Parliament who point to farmers and to private sector companies along the food chain. They point to them as part of the problem in the case of climate change, which is, I think, also the case in the European Parliament. And it's true. Farmers and the food production and food companies are part of the solution on pollution, climate change, greenhouse gases, and all these kind of things. But having said this, we only can find solutions in this field, in the climate change challenges, if we invite them or commit them to become part of the solution as well. So they are both. They are now considered as part of the problem. Let us make them part of the solution. And then be aware about all the creativity, and Albert Jan knows it, and I know it from my history as a minister. They are very creative, and they can become very much committed to become part of the solution in the climate change issue. Okay. Having said this, the question of development is also there, because what about the Dutch farmers, what about European farmers, but we like also African farmers. 75% of them are women farmers, to develop and to create their own future and to develop the future, to improve the future for their children and grandchildren. Our solution is to make a smart combination of new technologies, making use of new technologies like smartphones or iPads, combined with regional and local wisdom. And it's quite easy to do this. Let me give an example. I was in Ethiopia and I went to a farmer's field school where the teacher doesn't go to a building to teach the pupils and the students, but he has a scooter or a little motorcycle, and he is driving around, and everywhere in the rural area, farmers gather together, come together to be a student in the farmer school. Well, we were sitting there, and I was also in the lesson, and suddenly I heard a cell phone ringing. And one of the farmers sitting there in a very poor rural area, he jumped up and he smiled at me, and he went outside with a pink cell phone. So it was really amazing. But suddenly I realized, if there is one with a cell phone, probably all of them have. And indeed, they all had a smartphone, and they had one information point where they got information about seed prices, about market prices, about the weather forecast, and all these kind of things, which is amazing. And they were able, making use of these new technologies, they were able to increase their production by 300% in 4 years. This is sustainable development. Well, Madam Chair, to make my introduction not too long, I have a few recommendations for you. My first recommendation is make farmers and private sector companies in the food chain part of the solution. Be aware they are part of the problem, but introduce them also as part of the solution. My second advice or recommendation would be invest in cooperation. Good cooperation with private sector companies who are thinking about market development on the longer term and who are recognizing that they have to invest in a genuine way at this very moment. Work with them together. They are only a small group ahead of many private sector companies, but identify them and work with them together, as well as with the civil society organizations. Because we all know, or we should know, that governments on their own cannot solve all the problems. What is necessary is that in development, speaking about development and speaking about feeding the world, it's necessary that governments show ownership. And we know that it's necessary, but it's not everywhere. There are many countries around the world, not only in Africa, where governments are not really showing ownership. My next recommendation is do not look only to agriculture and food production, have also attention for the food chain. Because we do not have only hunger, we also have malnutrition, and the problem of obesitas is a very fast growing problem. So we have malnutrition, stunting or hidden hunger, it's called as well. But obesitas is very fast growing also in the European countries. Be aware of this and please be active also in this field. My last recommendation is be proud on your farmers. Be proud on your farmers, not only in the Netherlands, but traveling around. I see that in many countries the request for decreasing the budget for the cap is there, and probably it's right. I'm not a politician anymore, but continue to invest in farmers because they might be the hero of our future. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for that very positive conclusion. Be proud of our farmers, and I think it's something we should take with us. And your comments on climate smart agriculture. And I can just tell a very short story of being in Malawi and having the same experience as you have had, where the advisor who had been trained in Switzerland cycled to the farms, and where production on those farms that had advice dramatically increased. So it works. So on that point, let me move to our next speaker, my colleague Sofia Kukovic, who will now address us on her own experience on food and quality food and how important that is.
Thank you. Presentation. I have the presentation. Okay. Thank you, Madam McGuinness, for this opportunity, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to present my initiative from my small country that is currently undergoing the real turmoil of crisis. It is inspiring to see how another not so big country, the Netherlands, create opportunity out of every inch of land, and how your employment rate remains stable and very high. My primary goal with this initiative is to encourage my nation, Slovenian nation, to respect the land in the country we have, and to find opportunities in this land for the future employment. As former Minister of Health and businesswoman and a part-time farmer when times allow, I'd like to point out some facts that led me to launch this initiative, Food for Health and Jobs, in Slovenia. Among our 500 million Europeans, there is a growing awareness on the interdependency of health, well-being and food. We are often nicer and more attentive to our cars than to our bodies. Facts are that cancer affects 1 out of every 4 people in Europe. There are more than 100 million people in Europe suffering from chronic disease. Hospitals and clinics are too full, and our health budget emptier by the day. There is another chronic disease we are facing in Europe. It's called unemployment. We all talk and hear about unemployment numbers daily. This waste of human potential. There is another waste of potential we don't often hear. There are over 10 million hectares of unused land in Europe. These 10 million hectares can represent a real opportunity, an opportunity for health, for environment, and for employment. As a test case of what could be done, I started a project called Food for Health and Jobs. We collaborated with 2 national institutes in researching countrywide what plants or crops would be suitable given the available resources to preserve genetic diversity through the conservation of local varieties of plants, to increase self-employment and entrepreneurship, and to ultimately improve the quality of people's life and health. We then piloted a competition among individuals, schools and farmers to start growing 4 key types of crops: the legume bean, garlic, berries and buckwheat. These crops were selected by the National Institute due to their proven positive effect on health. Some of them, they are natural antibiotics and antioxidants. More than that, most of them we simply don't find in our country anymore due to imports and the fact that people are not aware of possible opportunities in the market. For these first years, we aimed for 30 to 50 participants who would start growing these crops and compete for yield, best recipes and innovative application. We were very surprised when within a month 150 participants, schools, farms and individuals entered this competition. Throughout the year, we organized visits and events led by experts in specific fields. Most of the participants planted the chosen crops for the first time and now will continue to plant them in the future seasons. The innovation challenge part of the project brought direct results. 22 new entrepreneurial ideas for food products then can be brought to the market and 27 opportunities for self-employment. More and more people are looking for healthy food and healthy environment. As the European People's Party, we cannot afford to just leave this subject to the left parties. We have to also show citizens that we care about their health and well-being. Our EPP message could be structured in a different way, that we support health and healthy economic growth. Our key question is now how to attract educated and skilled young people to the land. How to encourage a greater respect and love for the land. How to convince them that this is their opportunity. My primary goal was to encourage my nation, young people, in particular, to respect the land and the country we have, and to find opportunities in this land for the future employment. At the European level, we also try to supply people with safe, high-quality food while ensuring future employment. For this purpose, it is necessary to take advantage of all this unused potential that the land has to offer while connecting the funds, the next MIF and common agriculture policy to our people and our companies. In Slovenia, we started our project Food for Health and Jobs as a prototype. We are in the planning phase for the next year, and I'd like to invite you to think with me how to scale it on European level. Thank you.
And thank you for some very practical examples of what can be done. And I can certainly connect you with the Irish situation, so we can make those connections, which I think is really important. We can now go to our discussion, and I invite anyone with questions or comments. Please, our list, Mr. Schnellhardt, you have the floor.
Ja, vielen Dank. Also erstmal vielen Dank den Diskutanten oder den Referenten davon. Das war schon sehr umfangreich, aber man entdeckt natürlich sofort in jedem Bericht auch Widersprüche, die sich gegenseitig begegnen, wo man sagt, der eine sagt das, der andere sagt das. Ich fange mal ganz anders an. Klapperform hat mal gesagt, vor einigen Jahren, wenn wir 7 Milliarden sind, bricht alles zusammen, haben wir keine Chance mehr, kein Leben mehr auf der Welt.
7 billion, then the end was in sight. We now have a case where the population has hit that level and beyond. You're quite right, Mrs. Verborg. We have seen technological development in the farming sector, and that has always moved in the right direction. We've seen research, science applied to food production. So this is nothing new. What we're doing is continuing a trend that has been about for quite some time in the farm sector. So I do have a question at this point.
Beger hat gesagt, wir sollen mehr exportieren.
We were told that we should export more.
Sie haben gesagt, es gibt genug
Lebensmittel, food exports. You said that there is enough food to feed
vor Ort
everyone and deal with famine.
Parlamentarischen Versammlung AKP.
Now, I am a member of the ACP Assembly, and I believe that there are plenty of examples when you go to the ground to see how people could improve life in villages in Africa if you were to apply our know-how. So I think it is extremely important that we ensure that transfer. But very often we are impatient. That's the feeling I get. We interfere with our ideas and our preconceived notions. In Ethiopia, we are seeing what we in Europe describe as land grabbing, forcing out poor farmers from their villages. They can no longer feed themselves. Well, I would see things a little bit differently. Someone is coming along. Let me just turn off my phone. Someone is coming along with know-how and technology to produce food, triggering development in an area that has been using techniques from the Middle Ages, ploughing and so on and so forth.
Ist es denn nicht möglich, dass man dann mit unseren Vorstellungen über ordentliche Regierungsführung
should we not therefore try to devise rules based on our governance approach to ensure that farmers do not suffer setbacks and disadvantages? That would be better rather than completely putting a stranglehold on this land grabbing. The president of Ethiopia said once
schönen Landschaft erfreuen.
Well, should I sit back and admire our lovely scenery and then allow my people to sit around and starve? That's perhaps something of an exaggeration, but there is a nub of truth there. There's another contradiction.
Widerspruch mit den Verschwendungen.
The contradiction that links to waste. We have
der sogenannten Verschwendung nicht vorbei.
Production techniques, but that inevitably brings waste with it. There will always be some waste byproducts, and it would be better to try to use these byproducts or waste rather than saying we should try to cut waste completely. Another contradiction. Mrs. Kukovic says that we have enough land, about 10 million hectares. We talk about various problems. In Germany, you need sustainable planting of trees to compensate for land use. And very often where towns and cities are built, you're taking land away from farming and food production.
Der falsche Weg. Wir machen eine Agrarproduktion, wo der Vorschlag gekommen ist, 7% Greening.
Now, we have the suggestion about greening, 7% greening. That will be reviewed in 2016. Is it something that a farmer can in any case accept?
5 vor 12 bis um 12 verändern kann.
A farmer needs long-term planning. If they introduce greening now and then in 2 years' time they're told we'll scale back a little bit, there are going to be problems with the overall strategy. Now, Mrs. Kukovic, I think this is all very interesting. But I am not sure that this can be applied at European level. Our farming systems and land and soil are very different. There are very different interests that come into play, and I think perhaps that approach would be too socialist in nature. Perhaps at a small-scale level that works well, but I don't think it would be appropriate to apply this throughout Europe. I would sound the alarm bell there. I think it is a useful thought to consider, but I would be sceptical as to whether it could be applied across the board in European farming. I just think that the different farming methods vary too extensively. Thank you
for your questions and indeed comments as well. Is there anyone else who would like to take part in the discussion? Esther, do you want to make any comments at this point?
One question did come to mind when from COPA we heard say that the real challenge is going to be how can we do more with less. And then my neighbor said that should have been the focal point of the common agricultural policy. And that, of course, triggered the question, in what way does the CAP that has just been reformed fulfill that criterion and meets that challenge, and what needs to be changed or improved in the deal we have now to actually better fit the challenge that we have to do more with less? I'd like to know, because I could hear some dissatisfaction with the deal that was now on the table.
Okay, Madam Kukovic, would you like to answer the particular point of Mr. Schnellhardt? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schnellhardt, for your comments. I know that you are always very tough. It is necessary that also the others know that. But I'm glad that you give us your comments. And I know that is not the case which could be on a very easy-going way transferred to the another area, but that is a case which could be thinking about that. That is a new opportunity. We have to be very innovative because we will need a lot of food in the future, and at the same time we have to think about our health on a general level. And when I carry out the presidency of European health ministers, I became a lot of data about our sicknesses which we have in European Union, and I would just like to help the people with my proposal, in one hand when we are talking about health, and in another hand to give young people new ideas, because today we could connect the modern technology, as we heard before, the modern technology, the knowledge with the soul. And that, from my point of view, all together we could done more. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Velberg, would you answer to the contradictions which are very clear in terms of the presentations this morning?
Yes, well, I don't think it were really contradictions. It's a matter of how to make them applicable or implementable, I would say. The biggest challenge at this very moment is how could you make Africa, where a lot of arable land is and where a lot of opportunities are already, without spoiling more forestry or something like that, how do you make it happen? And I think ownership of the governments and governance, good governance, there is a key word. For that reason, I made my plea to work together with also with private sector companies to get business to business developments, and to work together with regional and local civil society organizations, because they can be influential counterparts also for the government. Besides governance and ownership by the government, you need, of course, an enabling environment. How can entrepreneurs, enterprises, start to invest there? They are looking on for return on investment, even if it is only after 10 or 12 years. But there has to be an enabling and reliable environment. And then, of course, you have to keep in mind, and in Germany you know it as well as we know it in other European countries, creating legislation that really works out as you have meant it, is complicated. And creating institutions that are including people and creating opportunities for all people, n'importe pas, not depending on which level within society they are, is a new challenge. So that's what I would like to say, but we have to continue to work on this. Let me make one last remark, because we talk about sustainability, and that is very important. What I notice many times is that many people talk about sustainability only in the field of environment and climate. What they forget is that sustainability contains not only an environmental and climate aspect, but also a social aspect and an economic aspect. Because if you only give priority to environment, to the environment, well, you never can maintain in a social way or in an economic way. So please take care of this important balance in the field of sustainability. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Albert to comment and perhaps to take up the question of Esther de Lange in relation to the CAP and sustainable agriculture.
Yeah, let's start with the CAP itself. Well, the new CAP has taken on board old-fashioned greening by extensivation of agriculture, and not to pay enough attention to innovation and green innovation. That's really important, that we can do more with less. That's the only answer in the future. And second, even to Mr. Snellart, I must say there are huge challenges to the European farmers itself. If you look to the lack of resources in the future, the lack of energy, on the other hand, the people will pay more attention to the way the cattle is raised and how we produce food. So grass-raised beef from Ireland will be a topic. grass-fed beef from Slovenia in France, because of the biodiversity of this region, will be an item even for the consumers in the future. And if there is a lack of natural resources, there are a lot of regional natural resources in the region itself. And I think that European farmers have a bright future if we accept that, and we accept that it's not one answer to the whole European Union, how we produced. There will be people will pay more attention to regional production, to specialties from the region, but also what are the best circumstances to produce food. And for Ireland and for the Scottish Highlands, it's beef or milk. For Holland, it's beef, vegetables, flowers. But for some parts of the center of Europe, sometimes it will be wood. Look to the Scandinavian countries. And it's necessary that the European Union accept the big diversity of Europe itself. And if we accept that and we use our natural resources for every region, that means that in the future the answer is not a feedlot of 20,000 cows in Ireland, but family-driven meat production in Scotland, in England, or in France. That will be the answer. Social, it's good for the biodiversity, and it's good for an optimal production itself. And that's also the agenda for COPA for the next 5 to 10 years. And that's, well, it's not the agenda on this moment of the European Commission. And what we need is reform. Also, I've mentioned already the nitrate directive. We need a reform on that. Look to the regional situation. What's possible? What can we do? And so there are others. And we need also a reform of the competition policy in Europe. We need that you strengthen the position from farmers and also from consumers that ask special attention to the way that we produce our food. And that is the main agenda of COPA, and it's the answer of Mr. Snellert.
Thank you for those comments. Two more speakers. Before I let Mr. Schnellhardt back in, Wim wants to contribute, and Mrs. Lulling, and then Mr. Schnellhardt.
Voorzitter, dank u zeer. Ik wil een beetje doorvragen op de vraag van de opmerkingen van Albert-Jan, maar mede eigenlijk door een klein tussenzinnetje van Gerda. Die zei, hoe moet het nou eigenlijk verder met die landbouwsubsidies? Oh, sorry, ik ben geen politicus meer. En dat triggerde mij wel een beetje. Ondanks alle hervormingen en moderniseringen blijft het Europese landbouwbeleid onder druk staan van de Groenen en de Liberalen. De Liberalen willen meer markt en de Groenen zeggen ja, het wordt niet verduurzaamd voldoende en niet snel genoeg. Hoe zie jij dat nou? Want het is natuurlijk goed om te zeggen er moet meer innovatie en het moet groener, minder energie, minder belasting. Maar hoe gaan we nou verder? Ik geloof zelf dat, laat ik daar helder over zijn, een landbouwbeleid zonder subsidies in de EU, dat kan niet. Ik denk dat je dan te veel stuk maakt. Maar de vraag is natuurlijk wel, hoe halen we die druk van zowel links als de marketeers eraf? De tweede heb ik nog een vraag. Dat is die buitengrenzen van de EU. Ik hou mij vooral bezig met asiel en buitengrenzen en mensen buiten de EU houden, om het heel oneerbiedig te zeggen. Maar ik hoor ook nog wel eens, met name uit de kringen van ontwikkelingssamenwerking, en dat is eigenlijk ook een indirecte vraag aan Gerda, of wij bijvoorbeeld met bepaalde producten toch nog niet te beschermend bezig zijn. Ik ken niet alle actuele suikerdossiers en zo hoor, dus pin me daar niet op vast. Maar misschien wel iets kunnen vragen over EU en marktprotectie. Dat is mijn tweede vraag. Ik weet dat dit geen onschuldige vragen zijn, maar moet wel even kunnen op zo'n ochtend.
Good questions. Thank you for them. Mrs. Lulling, please.
Oui, merci Madame la Présidente. Moi, je voudrais d'abord poser quelques questions à Madame Verbourg.
I have a couple of questions for Mrs. Verbourg.
Des chiffres qu'elle She mentioned some figures that baffled me somewhat. For example, she had statistics on waste. I had jotted down some figures. There was good news in the mix, the fact that we have 7.59, we can feed 9 billion individuals living on our earth, but we waste a third of all food. She talked about 50% waste. She also talked about 50%, 20% adding into the waste. I'd like to know, if these figures are accurate, we'd only have 20 to 30% left out of all that is produced. Are those realistic figures? And I have another question. I, for quite some time, was a member of the ACP Joint Parliamentary Assembly. I am now a member of the Eurolat Joint Parliamentary Assembly. Let me tell you that I have listened carefully to comments there made by our ACP and Latin American counterparts. The trend is very much to blame the common agricultural policy for all the ills that our partners are suffering. I try time and again to explain to them that we are perfectly well entitled to put in place our own common agricultural policy. Our CAP should ensure food supply for our citizens, ensure high quality food is available for our citizens. Wim has already pointed out that we have in Europe the Greens who feel that greening doesn't go far enough. There are others that don't want to pick up the tab, believe that the CAP is too expensive. I believe that we need to shed light on the matter, make it clear that the CAP is not too expensive. What would really cost us would be an absence of the CAP. That would be an utter disaster for Europe. Very often, we are afraid to proclaim that message. I believe that the reform that we have undertaken is sound, and we should defend it against the naysayers and opponents. I believe that the European Parliament has done sterling work. Our farmers should be able to survive and make a living. We should be able to preserve farming in Europe, and that is necessary for so many economic, social and environmental reasons. Our ACP and Latin American counterparts ask us to open up our borders to all their produce and product. They accuse us of protectionism. If we apply to imports the same rules that pertain to products derived from European farming, I believe that we need to stand up and defend ourselves. This isn't protectionism. We're just ensuring a level playing field, and we need that level playing field. That is extremely important, and that message needs to be made clear. I believe that we need to show the courage of our convictions. That would apply to me, myself, but also to others within these joint parliamentary assemblies. We need to be brave enough to stand up and say, this is our position, it is entirely justifiable, and we are entitled to put in place a common agricultural policy that we finance ourselves. We should also make it clear that we cannot import food that is produced under conditions that we would ban our own farmers from applying.
Thank you, Mrs. Lulling. Mr. Schnellhardt.
Ich mache es auch ganz kurz. Einmal, Frau Lulling muss ich unterstützen. Die Agrarpolitik, die europäische, ist in meinen Augen eine Erfolgsgeschichte. Das ist so gut gelaufen, dass man eigentlich sagen kann, überraschenderweise gut gelaufen. Aber zwei Themen haben wir heute noch nicht angesprochen, habe ich mal durch als Frage formuliert. Die Frage Lebensmittelproduktion, Energiegewinnung, nachhaltige Energiegewinnung. Das Thema haben wir noch nicht gesprochen. Ich habe neulich mit einem Landwirt gesprochen, der hat zu mir gesagt, worüber regt ihr euch auf? Wir haben früher auch für unsere Pferde, die den Pflug gezogen haben, 30% der Fläche für die Energiegewinnung verwendet. Und jetzt fahren wir mit dem Traktor und verwenden zurzeit Energie aus anderen Quellen. Also sollte es auch möglich sein, eine gewisse Fläche dafür zu nehmen. Ja, ich habe geschmunzelt, habe gedacht, auf die Idee bin ich eigentlich nicht gekommen. Ja, die hat mir der Landwirt einfach einmal so gesagt, hat er gesagt, also macht mal nicht ins Hemme. Vielleicht hat er auch den Gewinn gesehen oder die Gewinnmaximierung auf dieser Strecke. Energiegewinnung ist ja ein guter Verdienst für einen Landwirt. Vermute ich eher, dass es daher kam, als das, was die andere Frage. Ja, ich beobachte in Europa immer stärker eine Entwicklung, die Regionalisierung. Wir haben eine gemeinsame Agrarpolitik. Wir haben Regeln, die überall gelten, mit einigen Spezialisierungen in den Ländern. Und wir haben in dieser Woche im Parlament diskutiert die sogenannte Herkunftskennzeichnung. Es soll also draufgeschrieben werden, wo kommt das Produkt her, was ist das Produkt. Das hat in meinen Augen nichts mehr mit Gesundheit oder mit Produktauswahl zu tun, wenn ich mal das Rindfleisch Irland mal ausnehme. Das ist natürlich eine ganz andere Geschichte. Bei den Fleischprodukten haben wir ja die Kennzeichnung schon. Da will ich das gar nicht mal negieren. Aber wenn wir dazu übergehen und den Bürgern suggerieren, Ihre Meinung interessiert mich da wirklich mal. Ich finde, es geht zu weit, wenn wir überall die gleichen Bedingungen haben und dann das Regionale im Vordergrund schieben und der Bürger kauft nur noch Regionales, brauchen wir bald keine Agrarpolitik mehr, denn jeder kann dann machen, was er will. Und wir haben auch keine, denke ich, Wettbewerbsbeziehungen. Wir gehen einen gefährlichen Weg, indem wir den Binnenmarkt vergessen und Regionalisierung fördern. Ich halte das für kritisch. Frage auch an die Unternehmen, ob Sie das auch so sehen oder vielleicht können Sie mich auch etwas beruhigen auf der Stelle.
Thank you. Let me begin with Albert Jan Matt, who could perhaps start with the question from Wim.
De vraag van Wim is de kern, denk ik, ook van het landbouwbeleid. Het zal in de toekomst wel blijven en hoe hou je het overeind? De geschiedenis van de Europese Unie kent een aantal grote hervormingen over het landbouwbeleid. En de laatste grote hervorming was toch de hervorming destijds van Frans Fischler. Waar we omgezet hebben naar het plattelandsbeleid, veel meer aandacht en een veel meer level playing field voor de Europese boeren. De huidige hervorming heeft geen duidelijke agenda gehad. Ik ben er maar heel helder in. Dat leidt ertoe dat het uiteindelijk een gevecht om het geld is geworden. Tussen lidstaten en boeren. En dat is uiterst gevaarlijk. Nog zo ronden, dan komt het echt in gevaar. En ik ben het eens met de andere spreker, Sofia Kukovic. Als de Europese Volkspartij wil moderniseren, zal ze veel meer aandacht moeten schenken in het denken over de landbouw, aan de kwaliteit, maar ook aan gezondheid. Het is essentieel dat we dat tot onderdeel van het landbouwbeleid maken.
It's important that we factor in to agricultural policy, and the same applies to the social element.
In de landbouw ook in Europa
it's
werkt,
crucial to
gegarandeerd is van een zeker sociaal minimum.
Ensure
Mijn
that
organisatie,
European farming works in such a way that a certain
is een voorstel
minimum
dat in Europa en
level
toch
of
een minimumloon is
social
per lidstaat
well-being
afhankelijk van de
is
hoogte
included.
van de welvaart. Dat maakt het
It's important for all the member states to
Maar wat nog essentiëler is, hoe meer aandacht de burger aandacht schenkt aan voedsel,
if you look
hoe
at
meer
how
hij zich
consumers
verdiept in hoe het
envisage
geproduceerd
food,
is,
the more they look into
dat
the
is een
details
antwoord aan
how it's produced, this is a
hoe
reply
meer
to
hij
Horst
bereid is om eens
Schnellhardt,
een keer een fatsoenlijke prijs te betalen. Dat is
the
essentieel.
better
Dat zijn
prepared
de
they will be
elementen,
to
als we in
pay
de
a
toekomst een
decent
landbouwbeleid
price
willen houden, ben ik ervan
for good
overtuigd
food.
dat het zo gaat.
I'm
Het
convinced
tweede
that's what's
is,
going to
we
happen.
hebben nu net een handelsakkoord
The next point,
met Canada.
we've just
Dat is het
signed
eerste
this trade
handelsakkoord dat
agreement
Europa
with Canada.
gesloten heeft.
The
Waar
first
Europese
one,
normen, hoe je produceert, wel of niet met een hormoon in vlees,
European
die normen
standards
zijn bepalend voor wat binnenkomt. En de
involving
volgende
the
grote
use
deal
of
is met de
hormones in
Verenigde
meat, for
Staten.
example,
Het is essentieel
applied
dat
to
dat
imports
overeind
too.
blijft.
And
En ik
that
verwacht van het
must
Europese
remain
parlement
in our
dat van
negotiations with the
het
United States.
hoge niveau
That's
wat we in
vital.
Europa hebben,
We must
dat
ensure
het
that the
Europese
high
parlement
standards
als
we
geen
have
andere
in the
beschermer
European
is
Union remain. The
van
European
dat
Parliament
hoge niveau.
must protect that high standard.
Dan
Next,
de vraag van, schermen wij onze markten af? Dat is helemaal
This
afgelopen.
can
Wij
we
zijn
protect
de
our
meest
markets?
open markt ter wereld voor voedselproducten.
Well, that's behind us now.
Geen
We are
enkel
the most
ander
open market in the world when it
deel in
comes
de
to
wereld
food.
waar
Nowhere
sprake is
else
van een behoorlijk
in the world
ontwikkelingsniveau, van een behoorlijke welvaart,
with a reasonable
geeft zijn eigen markt zo vrij.
level of development has opened
Japan
up its
niet,
market to the
de
extent
VS
that we
niet,
have.
Zuid-Korea niet, Australië
The US
niet, Nieuw-Zeeland
hasn't,
niet.
nor has South
En
Korea
men moet zich
or
dat
Australia
heel
or
goed
New Zealand.
realiseren.
And they really
En
do have
binnen
to make
5
clarity of
jaar
that.
wordt van Europa
They
niet meer
recognize
gevraagd
this.
van
5
neem
years from now,
alsjeblieft al onze voedselproducten af. Nee, wat is jullie aandeel in het oplossen van de komende schaarste wereldwijd? Dat is essentieel. En het zou goed zijn als Europese politiek dat beter uit zou dragen dan het antwoorden van gisteren.
Contribution can Europe
Want dat
make
zijn de antwoorden van
to
morgen.
staving off
Dat is
food
ook de
scarcity in the world as a
reden
whole?
dat bijvoorbeeld de Nederlandse landbouworganisatie
The
de Youth
Dutch
Food Movement
Farming
steunt.
Organization
Dat is een club die nadenkt over hoe in de toekomst moet, hoe je verantwoord eet.
Supporting
Maar we steunen
a
ook
group
de actie
that
Damn
looks
Food Waste.
responsible as a
We
food.
zijn een van de
The
weinige
campaign on food
landbouworganisaties
waste
die
that was
steunen.
mentioned. We're one of the few
Want
agricultural organisations
het is
actually
ook
backing
onze
that.
zorg dat er niet goed
Because
mee
it's
omgegaan
a
wordt.
concern we
En als ik toch een
share
sociale
that
opmerking, los van alle andere
this
opmerkingen
isn't
mag
being dealt with
maken.
properly.
Het zou goed zijn als het Europees
It
Parlement
would be
in de
desirable
begroting
if the European
ook weer
Parliament
meer geld op zou nemen voor in
included
Europa voor voedselbanken.
some money,
Want
some
heel
more
veel
money for
lidstaten
food
komt
banks in the European Union.
En het zou
Because
best eens
there are
sociaal
quite a number of
element
member
zijn om
states
dat
that have problems there. That's a
Dat
social
was geen vraag, maar
element it would be worth incorporating. That's a message rather than a question.
Thank you for the message. Could I pass over, please, to Madam Verberg for Mrs. Lulling? I think had some questions about figures. Thank you.
Yes. Madam Lulling, thank you very much for asking this question. I have a clear message for you. These figures are right. And I'm very sad to tell you, I was shocked when I read them the first time, but it's the truth. And if you look at the website of FAO, you can find them easily. And there are a lot of reports on this. So we have to accept, we have to realize, and we have to take responsibility to take action, because it is impossible to continue. We can easily feed 7.5 billion people. We can also easily feed 9 billion. So we have to do our utmost to save food and to use food and feed in the way it is meant to be used. I think that's also a responsibility for a European People's Party, as well as for all ambassadors and people working in the UN food and feed organizations. So the numbers are correct. May I respond a little bit more on your position on how to defend the European CAP? I think it is necessary to have a very keen request to food safety, because talking about international market and delivering products from developing countries to the world market, we know that we are very sensitive, and our civil society is very sensitive to food safety and levels of food safety. Once we all remember the AHEC bacteria. We all remember foot and mouth disease. We all remember bird flu, and how sensitive we are, and how fast we have to respond if something happens. But a better way of operating is, of course, to prevent all these kind of problems. And for that reason, there are a lot of criteria to guarantee food safety that is sold in the supermarket. Let me add one thing to what has been said by Mrs. Kukovic and the response of the German representative. Well, one of the innovative approaches of food production is how can we also find new products? How can we use products also in a new manner? And let me give one example or two examples from the Dutch horticultural sector. In many plants there are parts for new medicines to prevent diseases or cancer or other things, or to cure illnesses. And I think this is also a field to explore, how to use food, feed and horticultural products also in this way. It's a rich, innovative approach. About quality of production, agricultural production and food production, I think the attention Albert-Jan Maat requested for the quality of agricultural production is right, because around the world there is much more attention for nutrition. How is our food? It's not only calories, it's also how what the combination is, how the nutrition is. And I think the attention for nutrition-sensitive agricultural and horticultural production is of immense importance and will become even more important the years to come. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Before I hand to Madam Kukovic, could I ask you to address the Schnellhardt point in relation to land producing food and fuel and fibre?
Yes, I have no problem with that until it is proven that the production of fuels and fibre is influencing the price of food at the markets. We have to keep in mind what happened in 2008 when we had the huge price spikes within a lot of capitals, 22 capitals all over the world, the social unrest and the protest marches. If it's clear that it's increasing the food price and the feed price in a substantial manner, governments should take responsibility. But this is not one size fits all. This is tailor-made policy, and again I'm back at the government. But Mexico is also but also Egypt. If you look what is behind the start of the protests in Egypt in the Arab Spring, so-called Arab Spring, it started in one way or the other, and also in Libya, it started with the food price volatility. So be very careful, very sensitive, but at the same time, it is also an opportunity to use renewed and sustainable energy.
Thank you. Sophia, please.
Thank you. 5 million young people today, they have no jobs. And if some of them could find a solution here, it's the solution for all of us. But in the same time, it's the question of sensibility if the young people have enough love to the land. That is the biggest question, because you know that this culture, this relationship between lands, between farming and young people is a little bit different as 10, 20, 50 years ago. And the second, each family is more sensitive to a health, because actually each family has some member of family which is very ill. Maybe because it's old, maybe because it's very young, but it have a big problem with the health. So I would like to convince you that we could be more sensible when we are talking about health of our people. Thank you.
Thank you all. Albert?
This is about the energy discussion about food or fuel, but I hope you will realize that in Europe, farmers are the biggest producers of solar energy. And for instance, my own organization and the Farmers Union in the Netherlands, we are the biggest seller of solar panels. So we do both. And remember that, and it's just 5 years ago that everybody told to the farmers that you have to produce also renewable fuel, energy, and so on. And we can't change every 3 years in our agenda. But what we have done in our own strength is to take on board sustainable energy production. And that's solar energy is one of the key issues of farming in Europe now.
Thank you for that positive message. Just briefly, before I hand over to my colleague Esther de Lange to conclude the remarks of today's discussion, a comment in relation to the CAP. There's some sense, I think, in what Albert said about a debate between member states, but it was a debate that was needed on the money, and also between farmers. So it is a difficult part of the process, but it was necessary to have it. I personally believe, and I'm glad that Mrs. Lulling supports it, I was one of the negotiators, so I have to say this, that we are in a better place with the Parliament's participation than without. Just if we had got the Commission's proposal. I think on the issue of greening, which was raised by Mr. Schnellhardt, the Parliament were very effective in ensuring that we did not have 7% immediately, because it was not a practical proposal, and also that we have a review clause. So I think that's very crucial. Finally, if I may say that very often politicians, and that is our job, we come up with solutions. Increasingly, though, we are faced now with organisations who say to all of our solutions, there are problems. So now we face this motto that I have, for every solution there is a problem. And therefore there is policy inertia. There is an unwillingness to take a risk, to chance something that might work. So I think we're going to have to be more bold than to be terrified sometimes by always problems being posed to the solutions we raise. With those remarks, I want to hand to my... I've stimulated more debate. Please.
One final remark to ask your attention for the balance between the rural area and the urban area. What we see already in Europe, but also worldwide, is that the younger generation is not interested anymore in trying to find employment, or cannot find employment in the rural area. And many of them think that farming is a hard job for only a little bit of money. So they tend to go to the urban area. But what we see now is that the urban area, there's a lot of attention, both from Europe, but also from the UN and other governance institutions, to invest in the urban area. Please keep in mind that in the rural area, it's not only necessary to produce the food and the feed for the urban area, but also to maintain and to foster landscape and water. Please keep this in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. And I now hand... Albert.
Well, just a small remark about the battle of money for the gap, but I didn't complain about the rule of the Parliament.
No, you didn't.
But the stronger the agenda, the less discussion about the money. And it was quite the opposite this time about the European farmers' policy. So that worries me.
It doesn't preclude that member states keep researching agriculture and have an advisory system to transfer knowledge, and that we can do that, I think, collectively. On those closing comments, Esther de Lange, it is your job to try and pull together a very wide debate, but a very interesting debate. Thank you.
Yes, and that's actually quite a challenge, but I will try. And I'd like to start by referring to the title that we've chosen for yesterday's and today's meeting, European Solutions Work. And I will definitely not echo the words of Mairead McGuinness, who said for every solution there's a problem. But I think we should answer the question, what is the challenge then? What challenges do we want to find European solutions for? And I think we've heard yesterday from Commissioner Barnier what the real challenge of the European Union for the 21st century is. He mentioned the figures. In 1900, we were 25% as Europeans of the world population. We are now 11% of the global population. And in a couple of decades, we will only be 7, going down to 5. We represent 25% of the worldwide gross domestic product. We represent 50% of welfare spending worldwide. So the big question is, how do we manage with an ever smaller and aging population to keep our economic strength and to keep our level of welfare? That is the big challenge, and we can do that through smart and sustainable solutions. Our hands will never be as cheap as Chinese hands, so we should be the ones that come up with the smart solutions that are also sustainable. And the same applies to agriculture and the common agricultural policy, but also to agriculture worldwide. 7 billion people worldwide now, 9 billion mouths to feed in 2050. And yes, then the figures might actually be a bit contradictory. Because on the one hand, we hear that means an increase of at least 70% in terms of production. On the other hand, we do hear that it's also a matter of how production is divided and how produce is divided worldwide and how we manage to waste less. 7% of farmers are under the age of 35 in the European Union. In the Netherlands, it's even worse. It's 3 to 4%. So also here, this challenge of how will we manage with a smaller group of people to produce the food that is needed every day. And of course, that's not only an assignment for the European Union, that's a worldwide question. Because as Gerda Verburg mentioned, there's a lot of potential, for example, in Africa that we're not using at the moment. So there's a double challenge. It's a matter of production, but also in a sustainable way. And yet it's true that the European consumer is very demanding when it comes to animal welfare standards, when it comes to environmental standards, hygiene standards, etc. They're very demanding about, and I think quite rightly so, about how our food is produced. And there are two ways of reacting to that. Like Albert Jamaat said, the European Union can complain. He said like an old man. I would never dare to say that, but those are his words. We can complain about that as an old man and be inward looking. And maybe as a European Union we have a tendency to do so. Or we can rise to the occasion. And I think we can. And actually the advantage of doing that will not only be in terms of sustainable production, but it will also enable the European Union to play a leadership role in the world. And that is of strategic importance to the EU and to its citizens. So all the speakers advocated the solution of do more with less to this big challenge that we face. And we've heard that that should be a focal point of the common agricultural policy. And elements of this big challenge of how to do more with less were focus as well on quality instead of just quantity. The example of Mrs. Kukovic was clear, but the other speakers talked about that as well. Don't forget the issue of hidden hunger. We are so focused on statistics that deal with calories that we forget nutrients and vitamins, and that is the real debate for the future. Health. The aspects of health related to food production, that is not an issue of the left-wing political parties. This is a link that we should make as well. How do we, as an EPP, make sure that the interest of the consumer and the interest of the producers go hand in hand? Climate-smart agriculture as a solution we've heard. Don't overlook the role of innovation in these climate-smart solutions, and whether that is the pink smartphone that we heard from Gerda Verburg, or whether it's precision farming, which is an example I know from the Netherlands, where you monitor very clearly how much plant protection products you use, how much water you use, and by having sensor technology in the soil and satellites in the air, you are able to use less natural resources and still produce more and better. And I think we could have included that innovative aspect in sustainable production a bit stronger in the Common Agricultural Policy. Make sure that solutions go via the market and that you give room for entrepreneurs. That was a very clear call that I heard as well. It was actually linked to the EPP claiming the Commissioner for Agriculture in the next Commission. I leave that up to the wisdom of those who make that decision. Whether that should then be an old man, that's another one. But the serious aspect to that is, yes, the EPP has a different view of where the cap should go and how doing more with less should take shape. The EU should stimulate instead of hamper when it comes to entrepreneurship in the agricultural sector. We've talked about competition policy. And we often forget that element. We, agriculture spokespersons, are very focused on the common agricultural policy. But in future, it might actually be more crucial even to an agricultural entrepreneur what happens in terms of competition than what happens in terms of CAP. Consumers are demanding, but if all parties, supermarkets, intermediary chains, producers invest in sustainable production along the food chain, that should be possible because it comes at a price. And I name that the Dutch example, but it is something that the EPP should take up because it's a way of forming sustainability via the market. And I think that is what the EPP is all about. The left, and we've seen this in the debate about the common agricultural policy, the left will try to replace the market. And they come up with solutions for sustainability that are not economically viable. And that makes no sense at all. Top-down solutions that don't work in economic terms. The right will just focus on the market. And I think it's up to us to make sure that production in a sustainable way is done via cooperation in the food chain. That starts with entrepreneurs, but that makes sure that all parts of that food production chain take their responsibility. And it's not for nothing that we've heard about social corporate responsibility from former Prime Minister Balkenende yesterday. And Gerda Verburg quite rightly said it's about environmental, social and economic sustainability. That is what the EPP is about. I think we, as the political force of the centre, are the only ones that can, in a logical way, link those elements and actually rise to the occasion. I will finish. No farmers, no food. Be proud of our farmers. That's what I've heard as well. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, they work to produce our food, and that's of strategic importance. They don't always get a good price for it, but they are the heroes of the future. Whether it's about production, maintaining the countryside, providing energy, all the challenges that are ahead of us, farmers might have been part of the problem, but they are definitely part of the solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for those inspiring summary of what has actually taken place here today, and I hope you have been inspired by this conversation. I think it's been excellent. So my thanks to Esther, to Albert, to Gerda, and to Sophia for a very stimulating debate here. I think it falls to me, if I may, to thank our colleagues, Wim, Corinne, all of the delegation for an excellent 2 days of discussion and debate. Thank you so much. It has been absolutely wonderful to be here in Amsterdam and to be able to spend time listening to insights into issues that we deal with on a daily basis. So you should take a bow. We're very happy to be here. I'm very pleased with the level of the panels and the discussion that has taken place. Can I also thank Roos Petom, the President of CDA, who has been here for much of the proceedings. Let me congratulate you on your recent election successes, and that is excellent. And your presence we really appreciate, because you are extremely busy, but the fact that you are here with your EPP colleagues I think says a great deal. So thank you for that. Thank you to my panel again for their timekeeping and concern, and I wish you all a safe journey back to wherever you head to go. But before you do, let us take some lunch and thank the farmers who produced it. Have a nice afternoon.